you're about to experience a new way to thrive in martial arts by exploring who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you believe in. It's time to rise, because this is where we challenge and say no to outdated industry norms and say yes to change, so that we create a healthier, happier, and thriving martial arts community. I'm your host, Laurien Zurhake. Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Ingamells. Ed is a registered psychologist and owns a master's degree in neuroscience. Furthermore, he is known for implementing modern approaches to skill acquisition that involves live work instead of dead drilling. Ed was one of the first inspirational figures for Alex and me when it came to validating that we were on the right track with this constraints-led approach in general, and taught us invaluable tools aiding us in designing submission games in particular. Ed will be teaching a camp at our school in Germany in September, so definitely keep an eye out for that. This episode is longer than usual, but I assure you it is worth it as we discuss many crucial topics related to the constraints-led approach, healthy gym environments, cross-training. For instance, we explore the intricate relationship between language, culture, and pain perception, emphasizing how cultural context shapes our understanding of experiences, and most importantly, the overlooked psychological side, and so much more. Take your time and enjoy. I present to you Ed Ingamells. Welcome, Ed. I'm very happy to have you on my podcast. This episode is going to be a little different because people are probably going to expect loads of CLA, but actually, we may touch on it. I also really want to focus on psychology and neuroscience and how that is useful for Jiu-Jitsu. Because as I understand correctly, you're a registered psychologist and you have a master's degree in neuroscience, correct? Would you like to introduce yourself further and tell me a bit more about it?
I'm Ed Ingamells. I've been off the podcast scene for a while, so I've been dragged back on now. I teach out of Hendon in London. I run the Institute of Grappling. We've been kind of up and about for about 4 years now. I was a failed academic, a PhD dropout that just got obsessed with Jiu-Jitsu and then put all his time and energy into Jiu-Jitsu. I think I'm probably not that well known with the CLA group as I maybe should be. So I've been doing all that kind of constraint-led approach and ecological dynamics for a good sort of 5 or 6 years now. But I have kind of dropped off the scene in the last year and a half, primarily because I'm just kind of got a bit fed up with what everyone was saying and the arguments. And yeah, that hasn't got any better, has it? So
no, I think we are now going from it is nonsense, it doesn't work, to but I've been doing this for forever.
There's so many people. Yeah, I was getting that with people. I get people coming up to me and trying to tell me about it. They again, with the things people post, that's one thing. I feel ChatGPT has made it a lot easier to sound like you know what you're talking about nowadays. As soon as I have a conversation with someone, it's easy to find out whether they have a grasp of it or not. As I say, I've been playing around with this sort of pre-pandemic, so 5, 6, 7 years, maybe something like that. It was like the very beginning of the pandemic, I started shifting from a more kind of cognitive framework with coaching to a more open and live, and I suppose you'd call it eco if you want to, sort of framework. And it took me, as I say, my background is from the cognitive side of things. The psychology that I did my undergrad degree and what I was doing my PhD was based in a cognitive framework. And we were looking at memory, looking at the kind of neurocorrelates of memory. But everything was based around a framework that cognitive psychology was kind of correct. And it was, you know, memory stores and representation and all this kind of mental representations and all this kind of stuff. It took me a while to get my head around it. But to be fair, I feel I was lucky because I feel I was in a position where it should have been easier for me to kind of get my head around it from a research perspective. But yeah, there's a lot of people that seem to have picked it up quite quickly. Well, some badly. But yeah, at the moment, it does seem to be more about kind of a conflict between who did it first, who does it better, who's right, who's wrong. The perspective of how do we help our students get as good as they can as fast as they can has kind of been a little bit pushed to the side, which is one of the main things that annoys me, because that's the primary objective as a coach. It's to develop good, happy students, and not to get into some sort of a measuring contest online. By the way, I've completely forgot to ask you. How do you feel about swearing on the podcast? Because that's right. Okay. Because that's something I'm purposely trying to hold back on, but occasionally I may drop an F-bomb. Yeah. It's interesting to, again, with these podcasts, I have a habit of kind of hijacking it and then questioning the host more than they question me. What's your current kind of view on the kind of constraint-led approach in jiu-jitsu? Very general question, but
What I see is that more people start to see that it's useful, and I see that more people want to implement it. But it's very hard because, I mean, I remember Alex and I also started around 220. Then through trauma and from coaching, I realized when I did games, they did better. There were no activations. And that's how I found ecological psychology, ecological dynamics. And that's how our journey started. But of course, we read a lot. We read the literature and we experimented a lot. We made loads of mistakes. We went from designing games to still teach a specific technique to realizing, and there for us, invariance helped a lot to kind of like, but what exactly needs to happen? And that changed. That changed it. It took us, I think, a good 1.5 years to kind of fully implement it and to go away from kind of technique based. Not that I have anything against showing something or also have every now and then direct instruction. That's kind of how it went for us. It took us long because it was before Greg Souders and other people were known.
yes, yeah,
So,
same for
so
me.
so we were really very much dependent on literature and what we saw in our own practice. So when actually this big bump happened, was for us good because it was confirmation that we're definitely going into the right direction. So I see that people that started later can pick it up quicker as long as they do nerd out a little bit with the literature. I don't think every rabbit hole is necessary for practice design per se, unless you find it interesting. But I sense now that there are people that want it, but also don't want to put effort in it. And it's the
Yes,
same in jiu-jitsu. It's the same if I want to get strong, if I do weightlifting, I need to put the effort in it. So I cannot whine for something that I do. And that's what I see right now. I see people that just because they play the game, they think that they are doing the constraints led
yeah,
approach. Even if
yeah,
they accidentally actually create a good one, as long as they don't know what design, what the search space is, what behavior they want to see, they're still not aware of it. So I think that we're now in a stage where more clarity is needed, but we also need more effort from those really wanting to learn it.
yeah. I think that's always been, I think, the case with anything like this, that it's people want shortcuts, they want accelerated learning programs, all this kind of like shit, which is just it's not, it's not a thing. Like, everything is going to involve a significant amount of effort and consistency, whatever you do. Like, say, whether it's getting strong, whether it's getting good at jiu-jitsu, whether learning any kind of subject. I think, I mean, the thing is nowadays that it's the same with everything. When it starts to get popular, the social media space starts to become a little bit flooded with it, and there's no quality control. Anyone can put anything out, and people, it's hard to, again, it's like when you start learning jiu-jitsu. I remember when I first started, it was back when, there wasn't much technique about, and there was just a few little bits on YouTube. I couldn't tell the difference between a bad technique and a good technique. I didn't have that ability to differentiate between what was good and what was bad. And it's the same now with this kind of topic. It's not necessarily the quality that catches your eye on social media. It could be amount of followers. It could be just the way the person communicates. So you're getting attracted to bits of information about this that may not be good quality, and the topic is confusing enough as it is, without that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, the things that I think are pulling people in are the things that are quick fixes. Again, accelerated learning, pick it up quickly, all this kind of stuff. And ultimately, long term, what that does is it makes the whole thing harder to understand and to implement and to just generally use as a coach. But it's a problem with everything. Social media is not good for a lot of things. It's a bit of a cesspit. But for this, as I say, the good thing is the fact there is a massive increase in content shows that there is a really big increase and there's a real interest in what's happening now. When I first started kind of doing podcasts and stuff, I spent most of my time on the podcast just trying to convince the person that I wasn't crazy. Now it's good because people realize there is something to this, and it isn't just a bunch of nerds that are bad at jiu-jitsu trying to find their way in. There is legitimacy to how this kind of works. So my approach is, it's very different the way I do a podcast now. I don't have to do that now because I'm now going on a podcast and speaking to people that know what they're talking about. So I don't have to kind of go back and start, going through the idea of attention and intention and calibration, all this kind of stuff, all this, as I say, what we see as basic stuff. But as I say, it takes a long time to pick that stuff up. And if your understanding of that is some stuff on the internet by someone who's just jumped on a bandwagon, a pretty big bandwagon nowadays, and they just want to kind of get followers or position themselves quickly kind of at the front of this and try and make a bit of money out of it, it's not going to benefit you and your kind of learning process. That's the issue, I think.
I think that it's indeed an issue. And also, of course, there's a group of people that are very much ready for deeper conversations on podcasts because they did the work. They know the terms, they have experimented with it, they have a fairly good understanding. So now it's hard. That's why I started also like the art of coaching, where we had very basic things, but also some deeper conversations. Because I think in the end of the day, I think what we need is to think, to be challenged with things. Are things I'm doing optimal? Do I see similar issues? Do I see different issues? Because I think as long as we can ask questions and are like, oh, I struggle here, or hey, this is an issue, we can continue. And of course, I definitely think because COA is hard work, or any academic field for that matter, any framework, to do give some credit where credit is due. Like for instance, for my part, through you, I learned how to teach submissions in a more constraint-led approach. It was like for the armbar that you then like the whole that you taught and
Yeah,
edited.
you could maybe tell me then, show me how to do it, because I'm still not sure.
It worked for us, so you must have done something right. But like
Good.
it really gave me a framework of thinking what I need. So I asked some time ago a student, for instance, like, okay, what kind of submissions would you guys like to work on? And she said omoplata. And I was like, oh, usually, seen as low percentage, blah, blah. Then I thought, but actually, you flatten them out in the mat. So they're between you and the mat. It's your legs against their shoulders. So actually, so I thought maybe it was just not taught right. So based on the structure from you, I played with it and taught also like at Artemis camp, also like at a omoplata seminar. And I think it went so well because, and the cool thing was that people started to go away from the typical kind of triangle leg shape. I saw splits, I saw all kinds of different shapes, anything, so that they could flatten out their partner, so that they couldn't get up, couldn't roll up, all this stuff, so that they could finish it. And also it could lead to other things, because I also added this thing, what I learned from you, that they want to keep kind of the position, but they're not allowed to finish this submission. They have to do something else. So they also started to add dilemmas to it. And they came with rear naked chokes from there, shoulder locks.
Yeah,
The one
yeah.
so kind of as tall went in some sort of weird leg lock. I cannot even describe it. But it's emerging. And that's,
Yeah,
I think, what is the coolest thing about more life work is fun. Because even for me, even if technique based training would be better, I would still prefer live simply because it's more fun. And I think that's also a big appeal why people want it more, because I think they realize with their students, they enjoy it more.
yeah. I think like that. So, sorry, I'm not. I'm not paying attention. I always like write notes as I'm doing this because my memory is shocking, ironically. So I have to kind of write notes as I'm doing it. There's some of the I want to circle back to actually. You're saying with with the omoplata, I think you're saying that people trying to get a certain leg position. I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing I try to get across to people is like, so with an omoplata, like you're doing a certain thing to the person's body. You're trying to kind of get the arm back of the behind the back, all this kind of stuff. But like the intention needs to be focused on what you're trying to do to your opponent's body. And I think where the issue with the old school learning is, it's more that internal focus of your body needs to do this to this. When you get rid of that, and you get rid of that internal focus of your body needs to move this way, needs to do this way, and your focus is on this is what you're trying to force your opponent to do. This is what the effect you're trying to have on your opponent. This is when these crazy things appear. And they manage to achieve the same thing. And I would say it with an armbar, like there's so many different weird and wonderful positions the body can be in to finish an armbar. But ultimately they're doing pretty much exactly the same thing, or nearly the same thing every time to the other person. There's variability within the armbar, but an armbar is an armbar. Again, it's a hyperextension of the elbow joint. So whatever your body's doing, it can be in all manner of contorted positions. But if it's creating a hyperextension of the elbow, it's an armbar. Now, say the previous problem was the focus on getting the person to put their body in a certain way, and their attention, their priority was focused on getting their body in a certain way, and internally focusing the attention as opposed to, this external. This is all again, my memory for studies is terrible. Again, it's what's the internal external focus of attention? It's can't remember the name of the lady. My memory's gone really bad lately, but yeah, the internal external focus of attention is kind of the key thing with this. And again, the last thing you were saying about it being more enjoyable, the fun side of it, like that's the most important thing for me, and that's the main feedback I've had is about that is just people enjoy the class more, and irrelevant of how you coach and whatever kind of theoretical framework you use, everyone agrees that consistency is the key thing, and it's much easier to be consistent at something if you're enjoying it and you're having fun. It's as simple as that. Gabby Wolf, that's who I was thinking of. Okay, I knew you'd come back to me.
Yeah, I think that's also for me, this the internal, external, because when I work with people with trauma, I do not want them to go internal at all, because if something is too stressful, it's just too much applied, I lose them. I don't know what they are. I have to get them back. So external focus is so much better because I don't ask them how they feel inside, because typically they kind of lost this body-mind connection a little bit because it wasn't safe to be in the body. That is kind of what they can relearn and reconnect, so to speak, with yoga, martial arts, depending what they like. But with an external focus, they stay much more in the present, because as you say, it's much more what they do with another person's body. And in so doing, they can kind of reconnect. So also with my feedback, I try not to be too reflective, depending on what we do, because I do that, because I'm kind of like, that's more for after practice, but not for during, because I want them to stay there. And that just was just such a big help. And indeed, again, the fun aspect, because some people, not all, but some women that start for self-defense, when they, after the first trial class, are like, oh, but this is actually so much fun. I sweated hard, because live training does make sure that you good condition. So they're like, I sweated, but I had fun and I didn't find it scary. And even though there's touch and also close body contact at times, and that is the key, because when we keep people in rest and digest, they enjoy things. That's where healing and learning takes place. And that's for me, more like a psychological logical perspective, exactly the space where I want my people to be in, regardless of whether they have trauma or not. I mean, when you have this stressful day, any day, you're a parent, you brought your kids everywhere, and you're like, oh my God, I need me time. I think this is just an optimal way of training.
I think, again, that kind of being in the moment is a big thing. It's the whole kind of idea behind like meditation, isn't it? It's making sure it's focusing your attention into the present and what's happening at the time. And I think that's a big thing. And what you need to consider as well, when you break it down to this idea that you're kind of you're seeking like certain patterns within the environment and all of this, but all of your action is really going to be based on the information you're picking up from the environment. The more internal your kind of focus attention is, the more you're focusing on, your body movement, the less information you're theoretically going to be picking up from the environment and the landscape around you. So to me, that makes complete sense, because the more information you can pick up from your surroundings, the more you're able to perceive, the more information you're going to have to potentially make better decisions and things. And I think people don't kind of get that. And again, with the old way training, they're constantly focused on how they're moving and what they're doing, as opposed to picking up and adapting to information from the environment in order to move efficiently and all that eco crap.
Yeah, let's go a bit more to like the psychology and
Sure.
neuroscience in it, because with perceiving, like we know from studies that people with trauma, they perceive the world differently because the world has quote unquote treated them in a specific way, and that will also impact how they perceive the world. So, or what I'm trying to say is that sometimes they may perceive it, I wouldn't even say wrongly, but like distorted.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down potentially to pattern seeking. There may be certain patterns in the environment that has led to severely traumatic and negative outcomes for them. So again, I mean, I suppose it's kind of it's more about kind of reassessing their ability to, the connection to these patterns and what they believe it previously meant. But sorry, you carry on again. I'm just jumping in.
No, good, because like what I've noticed was that, for instance, people that came that they were like, I can do that. They did not believe that they could do something, but then they did it, and it really blew their minds. They were really like, huh, but I really like, they had kind of some sort of cognitive dissonance moment, because they perceived things, but they did not necessarily understand. They did not believe that they could do it. Others maybe be able to do it. They could see maybe an opportunity for action or something, but they would not take it until we could, through games and keeping the stakes low, so that making mistakes and losing isn't a bad thing at all. They did, and that massively just changed their whole mindset and also their attitude to what is possible. Because I also go through like ecological psychology, and so far I haven't found them diving deep into that yet, that there's still like these filters, because they say it's direct, but I'm also like, is it? Because I
Yeah.
can see with people with traumatic experiences.
So this is where I diverge from the current kind of accepted meaning of ecological dynamics and what it is. And I think the key thing for everyone to understand is ecological dynamics is a theory, kind of cognitive, like cognitive learning and the cognitive theory is a theory. Before those, there were some theories that at the time were best fit for data and they were great, but now we know that they're not. Ecological dynamics is not a perfect theory. It's not right. Cognitive psychology is not a perfect theory. It is not right. They have some things probably right, but not everything. They are not complete theories. They don't answer for everything. We're saying again, memory is the one thing that it always falls down on, and that I've yet to be given a satisfactory answer from anybody, apart from they just turn everything into a verb and there is no memory. We know we can remember the memory, all this kind of stuff. And the one thing that for me, I still think there is a dual system with it. I still think it's very kind of like thinking fast and slow, kind of Kahneman, for me. Now, what pulled me away from my original way of thinking with the cognitive side of things was this idea that when I was rolling, I was doing things that were having success and I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't tell you what. I could watch a video back and retrospectively I could break it down. I could go, okay, I did this. Now, I'd be fucking lying if I said that that's what was happening in my mind at that moment, because it absolutely wasn't. I don't know. I would do something, someone would ask me what I did. I could lie. And there probably was times when I tried to, make something, but in reality, I wasn't making that decision. It was too fast. The time, there's a time sensitivity there where I could not consciously make a laborious kind of thought out decision. However, when I'm rolling now and when I've trained the back, like there will be decisions I'm making and things I'm going for that I know I have consciously made that decision. I have consciously thought about that based on things I can remember from the past. I can even remember, I will even be about to do something and I will remember a detail I was told about how to do it, and that will influence the way I behave with the environment. Now, the environment has obviously triggered that memory, but that isn't in the environment. That is something that's internal from a stored kind of, again, they don't like that, but it's not in the environment. It's triggered something that has previously happened to me. So again, you can say it's primed it. Potentially that memory is primed and it's easy to access because the environment is in a similar context to the memory. It's not in my environment. It's coming from some kind of internal store, some kind of, whether you want to be a mental representation, whatever. The issue kind of is, as I say, I find that it doesn't account for that. Now, this idea of indirect and direct perception, I don't see why it can't be direct perception and still be this. Okay, there can still be direct perception, and then there can still be kind of some higher level cognition with that direct perception, with that direct information. It doesn't have to be that all of the higher functioning cognitive functions are about decoding a impoverished source of information. And like, well, no, it can't be. Maybe it can just be about, using that direct perception and that direct representation of the world to do these high cognitive functions and link to memory and all this kind of stuff. I can already see Greg getting angry when he hears this is the problem. I know if he listens to it, I know I'm going to get a whole host of messages from him about this and stuff that he hasn't provided me. No one has provided me. Even the academics haven't provided me. Andrew Wilson hasn't provided me with a good answer to this. It just, that again, the other thing is I appreciate that when you start looking at the brain and you start looking at higher cognitive function, there's a lot to it. And it's heavily influenced by what we can do as far as technology is concerned. I mean, all the stuff I was doing with like fMRI and MEG is based on a huge assumption that blood flow shows activity. Now, if that's not the case, it's increased blood flow to an area in the brain. The assumption is that area of the brain is involved in what's happening. That is a big assumption. Now, if that's not true, then all of the psychology research with fMRI is just completely binned and it's gone. So again, it's technology limits that. But as I say, it's their kind of argument is they're trying to figure out these kind of this stuff at the beginning, this direct perception, and that's what I find fascinating about ecological dynamics. It's that ability for the human body, for any kind of organism to react quickly and efficiently within an environment where there is a time sensitivity which a conscious cognitive pattern cannot be effective to help you navigate that environment. Does that make sense, or have I just rambled for about 20 minutes there?
I think I have a good example for you, actually. When I after my ACL surgery, blah blah, year by, I competed again for the first time, and I had to go against a lady who was, as always, heavier than me. And so we had the first match. We only lost 2, so we had more matches. And the first time, I opened her closed guard like 7 times, but each time when I was almost out, I got like pulled back in. So I lost that one. And then I was like, the second time, I'm like, whatever happens, I cannot be in her closed guard. That's all I knew before, like in between. And I also was like, okay, she pulled guard before. I imagine that since that was for her a successful tactic, I imagined, or I thought probably she will pull again. So as I went in, I had no idea how I would solve that, but I knew I needed to get into the closed guard. So what happened was she tried to do a guard pull, and I just did a flying knee cut, bam, right through it. And afterwards, and I have the highlight, I'll send it to you later. It is pretty
Sounds good. It does sound good, yeah. I'm trying to imagine somehow. I want to see it now.
Yeah, I will. Wait, maybe I can just put the camera.
Stick it up to the screen and just like see if you can, because everyone's going to want to see it now. Would that work if you just put it up to the camera?
I think so. I just have to find.
Let's try it. Let's try it. It's just good
But,
content.
but I can explain more. So the thing was that afterwards, people said to me like, Laurien, oh, can you show me? Can you tell me? And I was like, I have to be perfectly honest with you. I've never
You
drilled
good.
this or done this in my life. No flying knee cut stuff. And
Have
something even
you had you seen somebody do a flying knee cut? Because I've
not
got
really. It's more
not
like
really.
that they kind of step more into a knee cut,
And you
more like that, but
sure.
not like flying. So let me see. I have it. So I'm the
Oh yes. Oh,
so
that's nice. Yeah.
but that was
So
also some
that's never done it before.
I did not just boom happen. All I knew cognitively was I cannot be in her closed guard. And I assumed, and that's also an assumption from my side, that probably she will try to do the same thing. And that was kind of like then what had happened. And it was interesting in general because also there I remember in the fight, and there I remember I was again a bit more cognizant. It was like I had hurt my close guard, and she had pulled all her weight like on my throat, and my legs were too short to keep the guard closed and push her away. So I opened it and pushed her hips a bit away to get a little bit of her weight off me. And I assumed that she would try to immediately go past when I opened my legs. But she didn't. Instead, she went woof, right in. So I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. So I pushed her again. She came in. And then the third time, then I did an overhaul sweep. And there I felt I was definitely, I felt that I was both in the moment, as
Mm.
in perceiving directly what she was doing, but I was also definitely thinking about it.
There was definitely a conscious decision making, kind of an element of consciously making a decision, which you yeah. Whereas in the
And that
first example, it
first,
just
not
yeah,
none. It just happened.
that's
But
the
second one,
exact kind of
yeah,
separation that I'm kind of
exactly.
getting at. Absolutely.
Because it happened in the same fight. So these two moments.
Yeah, same dynamic environment. Obviously, it's changing, but same environment, same kind of shifting environment. But yeah, it's that it kind of the problem. It comes down to you have to start looking into the kind of idea of like consciousness and phenomenology and all of this, and that's I mean, if ecological dynamics is confusing, then that next step into like Hofstadter and all of those lot, it's because it's philosophy and it's that's hard work. That's a lot of stuff I've been trying to trawl through. This idea of a conscious, what is a conscious state, what isn't, what isn't. That getting your head around that is difficult. But then it's then applying it to what we're talking about, because you can very easily, same with the dynamical systems theory and ecological psychology, you can go off on a tangent and find there's certain things I find very interesting, but then I have to kind of rein myself back in and go, this is great, this is interesting, it's going to make me sound really clever, but is it going to help me make people better at grappling? Is it going to help me improve my students in a way? And it's like, okay, I don't have time for this. I have to kind of pull myself back in for that. And I think it's very easy to, because I think nowadays as well, people are getting very much into this kind of it's more of an ego kind of argument about being right and being wrong. And then, like I said before, they're losing perspective of what their kind of North Star or their primary goal is. And as a coach, what it should be as a coach, it's the student, each individual student, and how do you potentially get them better, and having that, and that also kind of comes down to this kind of coach versus student centered kind of approach and environment, which I feel there's a lot of ego and a lot of issues with that sort of stuff. I've got like 2 pads of paper and I've got notes on the screen and I just keep flicking between them all and confusing myself. I apologize. You've heard some of my podcasts in the past anyway, so you know how just like random and tangential they can be. So yeah, that's a big thing, just to kind of go off on one a little bit with this. I think the coach centered and student centered thing, this kind of pulls it more into this a bit more of a kind of psychology realm and a realm of kind of self-awareness from the coach, for instance. I think to make this more kind of live and CLA, eco, whatever you want to label it as, approach work, it has to be focused around the student, and it has to be about the student and less about the coach, and the coach being that. Like the lecture I gave at the American kind of Ecopalooza or whatever it was, horrible name. The lecture I gave with that kind of focused mainly on that. I don't know if you've listened to it or not, but I think that's a big thing for a lot of the coaches, is still really relinquishing that kind of deity figurehead, kind of cult of personality status, hierarchy, all this kind of shit that we're very aware now is not just, I believe, preventing a lot of growth in students, but it's also promoting a lot of abuse within a lot of rooms, which, so it's not just an issue of kind of stagnating and holding back student development. It's creating an unsafe environment which is being exploited. If you want to run it in a more kind of eco way, like that has to be done. And I think this is going to be a holdout for a lot of people, because they will not, a lot of coaches will not be prepared to relinquish that status, that kind of admiration and worship from their students. And a good example of this, so I have a couple of students who, I mean, a lot of my students will cross train. Now, I actively encourage it, to the point that I have two students that are doing very, very well at the minute. One of them, I like call Adam Yakubi, who's a brown belt. Again, I've graded him from white belt to brown belt. He needs to train at other gyms to get variability and high level training. And another young lad called Dominic Klinger, who has just taken third place at the trials, winning 6 fights. He lost in the semi-final to Taylor Pearman. I've known Dominic since he was 14. I gave him his grey belt, his blue belt, his purple belt, his brown belt. And I've pushed him out over the last few years, and he's been training at London Grapple. I encouraged him to do his camp at Los Banditos, because everyone in the UK that's any good is kind of sucked into that black hole of Banditos when it comes to high level training, because everyone's going there. So I encouraged him and pushed him to do that. Now, if I hadn't allowed him to train on the mats with other people, again, high level competitors, different bodies and stuff, he wouldn't have achieved what he's achieved so far, 100%. But for me, it's a case of I want it's my student. I want all this kind of admiration shit. But I had to. It's about him, and it's not about me kind of building my reputation. It's about, for him as a coach, what's the best I can do for him, and the best advice I can give him. Where can I send him? Who can I get him to train with? That's going to develop him best as a student. It's irrelevant whether I get the credit or not. That's the thing. That's a lot of coaches won't do that. Or they'll get angry and they'll get off with their students and stuff. Like, there'll be times where he doesn't train with us for a couple of weeks, but then he comes back in and we go over stuff. But I was still coaching him. And when he was doing the trials, I wasn't there, but I was still speaking to him between matches and discussing these things. I'm not able to train with him on a day-to-day basis, like daily, because again, we're a part-time club. Even if we weren't, chances are, if we don't have the people in the room that I felt he needed to get to that next level, I wouldn't be training on a day-to-day basis. Now, as I say, I believe there's a lot of coaches that won't do that because they're coach-centered, they're self-centered, quite literally. And it's not about what is within my kind of toolbox or within my reach. What can I do to help the student, be it me, be it someone else I can send him to, another room I can send him to. It's a big issue. It's an ego issue.
It's a huge issue. I mean, you have no argument from me here, because we've both, Alex and I, have experienced this numerous times, because we started our own school because of sexual harassment as baby blue belts, so we didn't know anything. I think it was also a blessing in disguise, because we had to figure it out ourselves. I think that kind of helped us remain super open-minded and don't get into this, because we had people that trained with us for a while. They were blue belts just like us, right? So I didn't feel like I was this expounder of wisdom or truth. More like kind of the game designer. We just designed the field environment and kind of see what would happen. But indeed, we also encourage cross training, because you need variability. After a while, you know what people are good at in your school. They just know it, and you just need that. And sometimes, maybe like in my case, I need to travel because I don't have many higher level women my size. So I need to travel. And I sense that if I, for a longer time, don't have access to that type of stress, I start doubting myself a lot because I don't have this evidence loop that I know, like, where do I stand actually? And then if I sometimes then go somewhere else, and even if I go to somebody who's good, I'm like, oh, actually, I'm doing quite all right and it's better. But I need this year especially, I need to do this better, that I have more constant, within what's reasonable, what's possible, um, exposure to that. Otherwise, I just start doubting myself because I don't get this feedback. And I think for many coaches, as you say, they just want to be the God, the expounder of truth. It's like a coach-centered room instead of a student-centered room. And for me too, it's about my students. Sometimes I have all kinds of things planned, but I look and I'm like, oh, we need something else today. Whether that is because of mood, sometimes it's because of
Yeah.
mood, but sometimes it's also just because what Greg would say, opportunity. I see something happening and I'm like, let's do this instead. But for that, I need to look at them and not at, and not become pissy because, oh, I spent so much time organizing this or this for today's class.
Don't
I mean,
spend hours planning classes. That's my advice.
I know, but I mean, many do.
Oh, oh,
And I
100% they
think,
do.
and I
But I
think
think,
that's also like
sorry.
I also did it a lot. And at times I do write many things down, kind of the games we play, because I add notes regarding students and things I changed. um, just also that I can kind of, from my memory, that I keep it, that I also know where to look out for because in our school, they really do different things. They have different styles, which I find super cool. But then I also need to write things up, otherwise I will forget what they're all capable of.
I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. I still write down a lot, and I kind of loosely plan stuff. But yeah, I don't go. I think, do you know, with that planning, as I said, I've been coaching since I was a purple belt. I think as next month I'll have been a black belt for like 9 years. So I've been coaching far too long, and I look like I've been coaching a long time. But I feel I've gone through so many kind of phases of coaching and so many phases of development. As a coach, is my screen frozen, by the way?
No, it's okay.
Okay, it looks like it's frozen for me. Anyway, sorry. So many phases of development, it's almost like phases of kind of child development as you're growing up, and that I think the planning phase. So I did this a lot at the beginning, and again, I've said before in the past about at the beginning, I felt like I needed to prove how much I knew, and I think that the planning was a lot down to confidence with me. The more confident I kind of became, the less I planned, because I felt I needed to go in with a really strict kind of plan, a really clear plan of where I was going, and make the class look good. And the older I've got, the more confident I've got, the more I've been able to kind of go in and almost like to a class and go, what do you guys want to work on? And know that I can do that. And I started doing that a lot even before I started doing the eco stuff. I started being very open to, doing different things in the class, and especially with this approach, like it is a case of you've got to coach what is in front of you. Whereas the planning is about, it's kind of, if you plan and have a very kind of detailed plan, it's about coaching what you hope will be in front of you, and you hope they will react the way that you think they'll react. And in reality, that's not the case. It's going to potentially go off on a tangent, and you have to be prepared to kind of to do that. Like you really do. Do you just again, just to kind of pivot a little bit with your classes in your room, how much do you do, almost like kind of co-collaboration with students? Do you get a lot of kind of students coming up with really good ideas for games? Do you ask for feedback and stuff from students? And are your students able to literally just kind of shout something out and just question you and almost change the direction of the game?
So with the kids, what we have, and that I find so epic now, is that if it's somehow under constrained or over constrained, or I forgot sometimes to say, I don't know what defending players should do, they ask. And I find that so cool. And one time we had somebody else teaching and they just did something old school, like, and then they asked, okay, but what's the other playing doing? And then the person was, what do you mean? And so I like that they are already building this capacity for that. I found cool. And what we had actually the other day, yesterday, it was uneven. So when it was sparring, and also we did the stand-up wrestling, and one person was sitting next to me, and he observed correctly that with the grip fighting, the people didn't really get much further, as they both kind of got what they wanted, but they couldn't get further to kind of the winning condition. And he saw that. And I found it very cool. So I asked him, so what do you suggest we do to make it work again? And then he said, yeah, I think maybe when you add level changes in the mix, there is again more variability where you could do things. And I was like, okay. I mean, I thought of the same thing. So we did that. And then indeed it worked again because there was more threat, more things to expose, but also to respond to. And I found it very interesting. And the same we had last Friday, another blue belt covered for us, and was the first time that he did this. And he said to me, yeah, I found it so fascinating, he said, because I had all kinds of things in my mind. But when I played it, I really saw, oh, this doesn't happen as how I imagined it. So I had to change it. And I said, and did you change? And he said, yeah. I was like, and what happened next? And he was like, and actually it was fine. And so what I see in our school, because we don't really have a hierarchy, like we don't line up, we just have a circle in the end. Like um, I don't think that I know more than them, because when it comes to problem solving, we problem solve every day, kind of all the time, whether it's with kids, with work, with shopping, making ends meet. I don't know. We problem solve all the time. So if I know one thing, is that I know everybody can problem solve, and I just need to find the language, the cueing, the right environment, search space that they can go do it, and adapt when possible. And I noticed that because I also explain and we also say, and I do ask questions. Oops, you were kicked out.
Yeah, just something about it's insufficient memory. Yeah, you did lose me then, right? This is where editing is going to be coming.
Oh, we'll be all right. Don't worry.
So you were talking about with the kids, the problem, troubleshooting, problem solving. Yeah,
Exactly. Every person is problem solving every time, every day. So since I know everybody can problem solve, and I also tell them, I know you can because there's so much evidence that you do this. All I need to do is then to create the right environment for you so that you can go and solve the problems that you have that arise that we want to solve. And because of that, people ask questions and they feel also safe to ask them because they all have different.
That's the key.
That's the thing. They feel safe because but also Alex and I also go in and I also lose their battles. I don't win every exchange, not at all. I get beaten by my white belt
Good.
often not.
Good.
And
yeah, it's a good
but
coach.
it's like
as a coach, that's your goal. Your goal is to have your students beat you up. Like
yeah, because I think also because of that, when it's time to spar, they are not looking for, oh, I tapped coach. No, they want to solve the problems I give them. And that's a completely different mindset and culture that you have. So because of that, they will ask questions. They ask them, and they also often as they ask the question, they already answer it themselves. I love it. It's really what we have. I mean, the 1st of March, we exist 8 years, and it took a while, of course, to get where we are at. But at the moment, I really enjoy it because I know that when they cover, even though they never really even did it before, they think about it and they just see it. They start seeing it. Like our blue belts already start seeing when something is not translating or when something is not working. And I think that is amazing. I couldn't do that for many years.
No,
but I was a blue belt.
Absolutely. It's that kind of mindset and that approach to kind of problem solving is something I wish I had someone had instilled into me at an earlier stage. It's something that kind of naturally over time kind of occurred and I got my head around it, and I had input from various coaches and friends, students, peers, all this kind of stuff. But it's something that at the beginning, like for me, like with a lot of my more senior students, they know how to train, they know how to learn. Like if I'm not there, it's irrelevant because they're working on certain things. They know how to, efficiently train to get the most out of it. Now that's the thing. You're trying to build like these self-sufficient athletes. That's it. And if you have a more coach-centered and you run it the old-fashioned way, they're always dependent on you. Even at that height, it's that you've got to break that dependency in order to have them kind of self-sufficient and have them get into that top level. All of my top guys, like saying before about Dominic and Adam, they're both like that. They're very self-driven now. They understand how to coach, how to train. And my job is just every little bits every now and then. I'll change something. I'll suggest something. I'll ask a question about something just to kind of maybe push them in another direction. But like I'm not I'm not breaking everything down like in minutiae detail and saying do this, because it wouldn't work for them. It would stall their progress, in my opinion. It's a lot more kind of hands off with them and more. It's more, you know what, it feels with those top guys, it's more like mentoring than coaching. It really is like that. That's the thing.
I believe that because they already are doing it.
Yeah, I think.
But I also,
Sorry, you carry on.
I had this other example. We had, he's now a blue belt, but then at White he competed, and he somebody had him in butterfly, but he was standing situation, and he likes to do like kind of body lock passing, that kind of stuff. So I was kind of coaching from the side to do that, and all of a sudden he just wham and went for this guillotine. Before he was in mount, the guy already tapped and it was over. And I was like, so good.
So you weren't stood at the side going, I showed him that. That's me. I taught him that. That was me. I did that. I showed him.
But that video is so interesting because you can literally see when something was perceived. You could just see that moment. And what was funny was that he asked me like, did I not do good? Because you said other people, no. I think by all means don't listen to me.
Cornering is another area I feel is just not considered by coaches.
It's not.
I listen to coaches cornering, high level people who are perceived as high level coaches cornering, and it terrifies me. I've been cornering and I've told someone something, and then they've started to do something else, and I've literally shouted out, no, ignore me, don't listen to me, carry on. I've said to me, it's like shit. He knows more than I do. He has that connection with the environment. He has that haptic information. I don't have that. I don't know. I'm not seeing what he's seeing. I can't force him to see what I'm seeing. And again, what I'm seeing is from a third person perspective. That's a completely different point of view. Like my information is not that important, really. And as well, the biggest thing with cornering as well is telling a student what to do step by step. I won matches in the past by listening to the opponent's coach. 100%. It's like it predicts the future. You can see into the future. Like it's so bad as a coach, but I feel the coach, a lot of people corner and they feel they have to say something. I've got to look like I'm cornering this person. Now, whether that's because they feel, okay, people are going to think I'm a bad coach, or whether it's like the more I corner, if they do exactly what I say, people are going to think that, you know, I really won this fight. Really, I won it. No one wins it by cornering. No cornerman wins a fight, really. Like it's supplementary information. But that supplementary information shouldn't automatically override the directly perceived information of the athlete just because I have a black belt. So again, it's making sure your students know that. If I'm shouting something and one of my white belts turns around and tells me to shut the fuck up, that's great, good, like because you got it, you understand it now. Tell me I'm wrong, because I'm wrong a lot of the time. Like I've in the past I've potentially lost matches for students because I've said the wrong fucking thing, and they've listened to me because they thought they had to listen to me, and that's devastating to coaches. Like that was my fault. I'm really sorry. Like,
I'm guilty of that as well. I say nowadays, I say always that I trust them to know best. That's what I say, and even if they make a mistake, that's fine because that's also how you learn and get just a better competitor.
Absolutely.
And I know, and the fact that I say that I know, it gives them confidence that they can trust their own judgment. And that's also when I coach, I describe rather what their opponent is doing from my view instead of what mine is doing, because maybe they get information that can help them make the right decision.
Absolutely. That's supplementary information.
I will never tell my opponent. Indeed, I also definitely won, or that my student won matches simply because I knew exactly because they were saying it. So I'm like, I had one time also was so funny. There was a friend, I didn't know her game at all, but I saw she was good at top half guard and stuff, and then like the bottom person was that the coach was saying like, yeah, push her arms away, push her away with your arms, and I'm like, yeah, let her do that, and then just as a go, like it was so I was like coaching like, oh yeah, please do that, do exactly as your coach is telling you, and you could just see how that totally confused the athlete, like, wait a minute, what? You want me to do what my coach is saying? So
that psychological game is really good. One of my favorite ones, one of my favorite things to do as a coach, mainly because it entertains me, is what I call it direct counter coaching. Now, the other person, like the other corner or the coach, like, go for the knee slice, go for the knee slice. And I'll straight away, don't let him knee slice, don't let him knee slice. Get the Kimura, don't let him get the Kimura. I will literally copy from an alternative everything the other coach says. And again, it annoys the other coach, which just I find hilarious. It's brilliant. Like my students then laugh as well, but again, a lot of the time it then makes my students more confident because they become more relaxed and they start laughing, and it's like I like. And but again, it depends. The other thing is with cornering and just with the way I work with the students is completely different depending on who they are. Build up to competition. So some people I will be really hard on. And I'll put a lot of pressure on them because I know that that's what they thrive under. There's others that I'll be very gentle with, and I'll take the pressure off and I'll make it more relaxed because again, knowing them as a person, knowing their character and how understanding how they react to certain things from training with them, working with them for so long, this is what they'll get. The biggest, but then what you've got to consider as well is that student can be very different in a training environment to a competition environment. So being good at competition, you have to compete. Cost nowadays is the issue, but there's some students that when they first compete, they are completely different than what I expected them to be when they competed. We've had someone recently who did the first competition, a white belt first competition at the British. He's good in training. He's not amazing, and I'm not going to name him. I kind of want to because I want to kind of humiliate him because it's good for him because he needs it. But if I'm honest, I was unsure about him competing. I was like, okay, there's a chance he could go in and get smashed. He went on the mat and he was just a monster. And he ended up taking bronze at the British Open in his first comp. And I misjudged him massively. Now, the way I'm working with him now is slightly different because I don't know how someone's going to compete until they compete. They can show all the signs of a good competitor in the training room. But once they get into that live environment and the pressure's on and there's a cost and reward for everything, they potentially react in a different way. And then it's a case of, as a coach, however they react, whether if they struggle with the pressure, if they don't struggle with the pressure, then that's something that going forward we then work on for the next competition and try and get them comfortable with how they behave in that environment, best for them. And that it has to be completely individual. Every person when they compete, like they all do things that I've never seen before. Everyone has some kind of unique characteristic that I've never seen that before. That's weird. They're behaving no one see anyone behave like that. There's similarities, but everyone has something quirky and unique that's like, okay, this is interesting. How are we gonna work with this in the future? Is this good? Is it bad? And as a coach, it's being able to kind of pick up on that and try and help them and facilitate a way forward in the future to kind of make them, better at competing, more comfortable. And yeah, it has to be kind of bespoke, as it were. You have to be able to pick up on it and try and pick up on it as a coach. And again, like you said before about the student kind of picking up on something with the hand fighting, like a lot of my breakthroughs have not been my kind of ideas. They've not been things that I've seen. Something that someone said to me, it's like, oh, how the hell did I miss that? And yeah, it's having a room that is comfortable, kind of pushing back and suggesting things. And again, I've been in rooms where I wouldn't have said a word to the coach because they would, they wouldn't have taken it well. They would have taken it as an insult and a encroachment on their authority. And as I said, I mean, Alex is trained in our room when I've been there. Alex will tell you how weird our room is and how much lack of respect I have. An outwardly perceived lack of respect, but it's like I've got white belts like throwing things at me and stuff, and it's like I'm probably if there was a hierarchy in the room, I'm the bottom of that hierarchy. Nobody is worried about saying something to me or offending me or anything like that. And as well, it's making sure that, especially with some people, if they kind of point something out, I'll make sure that everyone knows that they saw this, and I'll get them to show something potentially if they did it. Others I might not, because I might feel they're not confident enough, or others I may push them to show everyone what they just said to me, because it might help their confidence and things. But it's that giving that credit for little things like that. I could just kind of take all this on board and pass it off as my own idea. But again, one, it's dishonest. And two, it's kind of then leaning into that. Our coach clearly knows everything because he's come up with this great idea. He's always coming up with great ideas. No, I'm not. Other people are coming up with great ideas, and I'm, trying to take credit for the kind of thing. So it's so, again, it comes down to coach student centered. Everything comes down to that. If that dynamic is kind of faulty, or that dynamic is skewed in the wrong direction, I think it's so hard to have a good functioning, effective room. It really is. It sounds simple, and in theory it's simple, but in practice there's a lot of kind of internal ego struggle you have to be self-aware of, and keep in check a lot of the time.
I think that what people don't understand is that just putting people in a room doesn't mean you have community. It is a daily practice. Every time it's practice. And when people understand that we all together are the ones that practice having and being in a community and being part of a community, that's, I think, where magic happens. Because how often I also just get, by the kids too, by the way, how often I get like bullied and shit by them. Like I had the other day one kid, he's the clown of class, and it was time to spar. But unfortunately it was even, so I was the only adult at that point. So I'm like, no, I cannot go in, because you never know. But he came like this with his hand like that, and he wanted me to greet him, that I would spar with him. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Because we're even and not enough other eyes on the mats, I cannot spar with you. And then he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're so small. I thought you were another human. And I was like, no, shit. So but it's I just love these things. They say the funniest things,
Brilliant.
but with the adults too,
Yeah.
it goes also like back and forth. But then I know when they take the piss out of me, they feel safe,
Brilliant. Yeah,
and they know that they can come to me
absolutely.
with whatever. Or when I ask for their feeling, if something's going, I get an answer, and that is. I mean, there's some people said to me, some coaches, yeah, well, Laurien, it's nice what you all do with AutoZone and stuff, but nobody ever complained to me. And I'm like, and that doesn't concern you?
Mm.
And then they were like, shoot it. And I'm like, yes, because nothing is ever perfect. Like even the healthiest,
100%.
greatest places, drama will happen. It's about how you handle
Yeah.
it and how you solve it. It's like what matters, but it will happen. So that is a thing I want to say. But I also, because you pack many things. So another thing that I also want to say, one time with competition and coaching was with a kid. He was just smashing it. And he said to me afterwards, like, but why didn't you say really anything? I said, I didn't have to. You were doing it. Like I said, I was afraid that I would just give you the wrong idea, or that
Yeah.
because you were just smashing it. Like, just keep on doing this, please. And then he looked like, oh, yeah, cool. And then he was like cutely proud. But also, we had this one father he would train irregularly and was okay-ish, but would then compete. And the first time Alex and I were also like, is this clever, blah, blah. He just smashed them into oblivion. Where we were like, but that's how you get to know people when there's pressure. Like if we don't feel pressured, it's easy to behave well or do this and that. And there we need some pressure, some challenge to see
Mm.
how we behave. That's the
Absolutely.
same. One of my pet peeves with self-defense, that some coaches say that they know how they will respond in a real life situation, and I'm like, you don't. If you've never been in one, or different ones, because there are all kinds of different life and death situations, you have no idea how your nervous system will respond. Yes, you can train things, but if you don't know what your default setting or settings are, and you don't know,
Yeah.
maybe you just freeze. And it's like, I find it always a very interesting thing that in general, I think my take is that many coaches don't know themselves. And if they do not know themselves, how
Mm.
can they ever know their
Yeah. Yeah. It's like those environment. I know how I'd like to behave if that happened. If, like, in an altercation, if someone had pulled a knife or in my head, I know how I'd like to behave. But like, until you've had that situation, you can't train. It's hard to train for that. Again, it comes down to that competition environment. It's like, I know how I'd like to behave, or that I'd like the student to behave in the competition environment. But I don't know. Like, it's someone will do something, and again, like, it's hard to judge people in any kind of situation where they made a bad decision or they behaved a certain way or done something right, done something wrong, and people are like, oh, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah, but you'd like to think you wouldn't do that. But in that situation, that context, and you being in their shoes, you don't know that. You don't know that. They may have done something. You might have done the same wrong decision. You may have behaved, in a bad way, and morally, it's like I definitely wouldn't have done that. But you can say that, but nobody's perfect. People make mistakes, and you're never in that exact situation necessarily. So it's that judgment. It's you've got to be self-aware that you're not perfect. And again, that comes back round to the fact that as a coach, you need to make it quite clear you're not perfect. Right? And if you make mistakes, you've got to own up to them and stuff. I've taught things wrong in the past. I mean, going back to like teaching techniques and stuff, I've taught something that's wrong, and like I can see it's wrong when they started drilling it, as it were. And it's that decision. It's like, now I know this is wrong. I know what they're doing is stupid. Now, do I just go with it and pretend it's right, or do I pull them back in and go, yeah, okay, I fucked up here. That's the wrong thing. And it's difficult to do as a coach, but in reality, I think that it's better long term that, because if they see you're prepared to kind of like admit mistakes, take accountability, all this kind of stuff, like that's all stuff that, because they whether you like it or not, they will kind of look up to you. They will see you as some form of a role model. Right? So it's making sure that as a role model, you're prepared to behave how you want them to behave as well. And the mistakes are the key things. Like everyone's going to make mistakes, and it's being aware and taking accountability for it. And accountability is something that I think a lot of people within the jiu-jitsu community struggle to come to terms with, especially in the current climate with all the kind of stuff that's going on. It's always someone else's fault. It's always, wasn't me, it was someone else's fault. And as a coach, you're going to be put in a position, however much you try and downplay the role of a coach, which again, I think, depending on the sort of person you are, the sort of coach you are, like for me, I'll always try and downplay it personally. You can't completely downplay it. I've had times where it happens quite regularly. People come into the gym, new people, they've got no idea who the coach is. No idea. I had a competition a few years back where I was wearing like an IOG hoodie, and I had someone come up to me and they knew one of my really experienced students, and they're like, "Oh, do you know?" So I was like, "Yeah, cool. Is he your coach?" And I was like, "Yeah, he is, yeah." And that person still thinks that this one of my students is my coach, and I didn't correct it. I had a nice conversation afterwards, and I was just like, I just can't be bothered to. I don't want to make you feel, because you feel awkward as well. Be like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry. So I'm not offended." I actually find that really nice. I can go there and I can just kind of be a normal person and not feeling that they have to talk to me a certain way because they perceive me as someone better. And I think it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing.
That's a very funny story. I would also find hilarious. I think that some coaches really think that if they don't know, quote unquote, everything or do as if, that people don't respect it. I think I should say the contrary is true.
It's the opposite.
Because sometimes I have something completely new in my mind. I tell them, I say, guys, today we're just going to test it out. I have no idea whether this is going to work. And if it doesn't, they help. They just give what they think, and we'll just, as a group, figure it out. I have the little ninjas programs as like 3 to 5 year olds. Sometimes just when they're petty, really, that I want them to return something and they don't. There I see actually super great behaviors. Watching Grappling, actually, when they don't want to give it to another, and I make games out of it.
That's good.
That is their credit.
Yeah.
They did that. They thought of it. I just made a game out of it. That's really all it was. Indeed, with coaching, I just realized that when they realize you're actually a normal person and not some sort of god or whatever, and you're approachable and you make mistakes, they relate much more to you, and it's again much more fun. Because if there is this status, this super tight hierarchy, how can you relax? Because you have to be on form all the time.
It's not fun.
So
It's not fun.
It's just not. It's no fun, and it's not possible really to create psychological safety and a chill environment. It's I think by default not possible when you have this clear hardcore hierarchy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Coming back to something you said before about they realise you're just a normal person, and like you mentioned before about someone saying, "Oh, I've never had anyone complain." Yeah, that's terrifying, because there's going to be issues in the room. There's going to be things that go wrong and things that people aren't happy about, and if no one has ever told you anything that they're unhappy about. To perceive, oh, you can't put a dog on the camera and expect me to carry on as a normal person. Oh,
Is she?
I've completely lost train of thought now. Hello.
Sorry.
Does she? Oh, she speaks German, doesn't she, as well? I don't speak German.
Oh no, English.
Does she really? Oh, I said it's bilingual.
Dutch and German.
Oh, wow, trilingual. Polyglot. Nice. Um, oh, God, what was I talking about? Yeah, sorry. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, if no one has ever complained to you or come to you with an issue, like, yeah, that's a terrible, but it's how you perceive that. Like, the other person obviously perceived that as like, oh, everything's great. But in reality, it's the massive red flag. It's the complete opposite. It's the fact that people probably doesn't feel they can come to you, and creating that environment that people can complain to you, they can come to you with an issue, they can, confide in you about things as well. Again, I get it with a lot of I feel it's almost like a kind of partial counselling job a lot of the time. The amount of students that confide in you and stuff as well, and yeah, with all these kind of things, I'm very kind of open with a lot of I've kind of mental health issues in the past and stuff. I'm super kind of open about it, and then I've had people open with me about it and stuff like that, and you get to know those students, and it creates like it's an additional support environment for a lot of these people. I think you get a lot of people being drawn towards jiu-jitsu with mental health issues and things, and being open about that, and being, aware of it, and again, being vulnerable as a coach, being vulnerable about it, being prepared to say, look, yeah, I've had this, I've had that, and it creates that, more open, safe environment, that, because gyms can be terrifying. It can be terrifying places.
Absolutely.
And you've got to try and create that safe space. So a lot of people will consider that, right, quite silly, but again, I believe the people that consider it silly are the hierarchical ones, and they're the ones that want to kind of keep it all macho, and it's like, yeah, it's a worry, especially in the modern climate. It's a real kind of worry.
It is a worry also because I think people don't understand how much marketing attracts vulnerable people. I'm not saying weak people, I'm saying vulnerable
Of
people,
course, yeah.
because at times, um, at times when you say, "Oh, self-defense," you feel more confident, you're less scared, all that. Then you will be attracting people that have reasons where they want to feel more independent, more secure, more safe. But it also means that you will attract people that probably have witnessed or
Mm.
experienced some bad stuff, or are going through some bad stuff. And if you are then not equipped to deal with that properly, or to create a welcoming environment that is safe but challenging for them at the same time, because that's how they can thrive. Yeah, I believe you're actually in the wrong environment as a coach. I think you're in the wrong sport, because just being good at something, it's nice for you.
Yeah.
Nice for you. Maybe look at this nice wall decoration, but how does that make you coach the people better? How does it make you make them better and feel safe? And I think that's really a big one that many just need to learn still.
I feel that's something that's finally starting to filter through, because it's always been in the past. It's like, if somebody has won a load of stuff and a world champion, then automatically it makes them a good coach. And I feel that separation is now starting to come through a little bit. Something that really irritates me is there'll be a gym, and I'll go on their page, and I'll look at the coaches, and the first thing I'll see on their coach profile is a list of their individual accomplishments as a competitor. Now, I'm not saying, it's irrelevant, because, it does attract people, and it does potentially give you experience as a competitor. But like I see those accolades and achievements as advertisement for their coach. Like, it's not as them as a coach. It's a different thing. And it's that assumption that has been kind of pushed over the years, that once you get to a certain level, if you're really good at jiu-jitsu, you can coach. And then, but it isn't. It's a completely different thing to being good at grappling or good at something. Learning then to coach something, communicate across, is a completely different thing. And I feel we're still very much at the point where a lot of coaches aren't prepared to learn to coach. They just assume they can coach, and they're not prepared to look at their coaching and how to become a better coach and analyze their coaching. And I will still look back at classes. I'll record classes, and people I do coach development with, like, one of the first things I'll kind of start with them doing is I'll get them to record one of their classes, and I'll get them to kind of analyze their class. I'll get them to, the simplest thing is to split, like, use of time and stuff like this, things they're not aware of, like split the class into, like, how much time was you communicating across instruction, how much time was live training, how much was feedback, how much was rest. And they'll very, very quickly, nearly every single person I've done it with will realize how much they talk and how much time in that class is taken up by communicating. And then the next step is like, well, let's just work on language and communication and become more efficient. Because what that's going to do, first thing that's going to do is going to give more live training. It's going to give more time to training. And it starts to put the room in a more kind of developing phase, as it where it's giving them more time to practice. But as a coach, they've not analysed their coaching. They've not looked at how they coach. And they don't realise that they're maybe spending 6-7 minutes outlaying something. And as well, like, if you're, another quick one I've mentioned to a few people is, like, if you're giving instruction for a game, for a drill, for whatever you want to call it, if you get 2 or 3 questions each time, that means that you're maybe not communicating across the objectives and what you want that person, the people to do. So if you do that, if there's a certain game that every time there's 2 or 3 questions and they're similar questions, look at how you're communicating it. Those questions are feedback for you. It's feedback for you to try and improve your delivery of the game, delivery of the information. But coaches aren't aware of that. It's quite simple stuff when someone points it out to you, but as a coach, they're not prepared to spend that time looking at how they can improve the training environment and improve the room by looking at themselves and their communication skills and language, and vice versa. One thing that came, which is really interesting actually, was when I was speaking to Alex last week. It was about it randomly came up because I was talking about language and perceived kind of meanings of words. And I've always had an issue with the term guard, because in English, guard is, the way I see it, is a defensive term. If someone is guarding something, they're defending. So for me, I've always been aware that language carries information, and that information is usually perceived consciously and subconsciously as a defensive thing. So potentially people who play guard play it quite defensively. Now, speaking to Alex, I found out that in German, you just use the term guard, and it potentially doesn't have that deeper connotation of a defensive kind of. Maybe it does. Maybe he's wrong, because it's very tight. In English, it's very tied to the word guard means to protect something, basically.
Yeah, but still, yes. But we also, in our room, when we are really working on developing the guard, I definitely have to say that it is an offensive and active thing.
Yep.
It's not a counter thing
that ruins it for me.
In there to then counter if they maybe make a mistake. What if they don't? But like, it's like, I want you to set the pace. I am like, I don't care whether you're on bottom, on top, standing, wherever. I want you to set the pace and decide where it's going next. So that I definitely have to say, when we do guard, remind them to not chill there.
So what I thought of at the time that I found quite interesting was, if in German or whatever, the word you use for guard doesn't inherently have this kind of defensive kind of element to it, you could then do a very simple kind of study with this. You could have English and German beginners, coach them using that language, coaching in a similar way. So the language of the coach is pretty much the same across both, but this term for guard is different. And then over time, seeing whether naturally the English speakers develop a more defensive guard because of the word, or the German speakers develop less of a defensive guard because the word in German doesn't carry this kind of more defensive kind of weight. That's the sort of stuff I find interesting. I thought about it as well in doing in English and just having a different word for guard. So someone who hasn't done jiu-jitsu and has never heard the term guard, just come up with a different word to describe what you're doing that doesn't have that defensive kind of element to it. And then over time, seeing what the effect of that language is on how their bottom game develops. So
think of like how we explain it to kids. or like close guard, for instance, is for me like your prison guard, but more like you have between your legs is a criminal, and the criminal wants to break out.
Okay.
You have to prevent that. But it's the active part, though. You are actively preventing it. Or we also have like, just think like open guard, dirty feet. I want to make them as dirty as possible. Player,
Yeah.
just stinky feet.
I kind of use that as, I kind of just, as a guard player, just try and keep your feet on them. And as a top player, don't let them touch your feet. Really, really simple one, just to have connections versus disconnections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think that the word guard indeed doesn't convey its functionality.
No,
Whereas,
that's what it
like
is.
same with Bela guard, it's just a name. It doesn't tell me anything
Mm,
about the functionality. Because I asked
sure.
the kids how they would, because I don't want to use it because of Bela but that's the next thing. But I asked the kids, how would you term this position after we played it? And they call it like snake guard because they feel like you're entangling. But actually, I thought, oh, but yeah, actually, that already explains much
Mm,
better the usage of how you could play that guard. So I
that's
think
interesting. So
it's
single leg X. I originally learned single leg X, and it kind of came from Damien Meyer. And Damien Meyer never called it single leg X; he called it anaconda guard, which again, it's because of the wrapping of that leg, so it's a more descriptive. But again, it's not necessarily the function, because again, the function of every guard is to destabilize or to off balance, and
yes,
to get to top position or to enter kind of other advantageous positions. But yeah, it's a very kind of, it's an example of just language, just one word, guard, and what it can potentially, what pre-existing kind of assumptions there are about that word, irrelevant outside of jiu-jitsu, as it were, and then the effect of that word, because you can do it for everything. It's like the language you use is everything, and then that comes back as a coach. It's like, how am I describing what is my language? Is it very offensive? Is it very defensive language? And then just me describing a game using more defensive language versus more offensive language, because you can describe it with the same intention. You can intention or objective. You can direct that attention in a similar way, but it's using defensive versus offensive language, and how much effect it would have. And as I say, like research wise, you could dig into this, and you could do very kind of similar research with different kinds of words, and then long term you can see whether that has a pattern. But obviously you would then have to match. You'd have to match the rooms, you'd have to match the coaching styles and all of this sort of stuff. So it's controlling variables is like, when it comes to like experimental research and stuff, controlling variables is a big thing, because you're looking for, it's the whole correlation causation.
because this comes close to the PhD I stopped.
Oh really?
Yeah. Also for
Why did
jiu-jitsu.
you? Why did you stop your PhD?
Because Alex was still working and somebody had to go full time.
Okay.
And I didn't like the environment at all.
It's exactly the same as me. I hated the environment.
I hated it, especially because Germany is so hierarchical, and me being Dutch, I'm just way too direct into like I cannot take it seriously. I just can't.
Very, very similar to me.
But my topic was pain behavior,
Okay.
and I researched ancient, so the Greeks and Romans, and a bit how it's in the modern West. And with pain behavior, you have, of course, physical behavior, but also words. And
So you have
pain,
also pain behavior, and what was the other?
pain behavior is like motor skills, but you also have, of course, words
Words. Okay.
and
Sorry.
vocal.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have motor behaviors, and sounds, and of course, then how we
Absolutely. Yeah.
speak. That carries a lot of cultural assumptions on, am I in which space am I allowed to express pain or not, gender. There's so many different reasons why yes, why not. That actually, interestingly enough, I found in the Greeks and Romans a bit more nuanced there than we are today, because today pain is bad, kind of, and we should be, pain.
Mm.
But there was part of growth. It can be all kinds of things. But when we come to language, I found that very fascinating, because language, although it's very important, it's also highly limited. And the physician Galen, he started to find words for specific pains. And he did that not just based on his own observations, but also, and that was quite unique, based on the talks he had with patients. What did they say? So that was already quite patient focused.
Mm.
many pain questionnaires today are essentially based off his first list. And what is interesting was that then there was a specific list, I think in English, and then they translated that, I think, to Swedish or another, and then they realized that that one-on-one didn't work because,
Okay.
but also, I often we use metaphors for things, say like, oh, I know last practice it felt like, a train went over me. Okay. But if I talk to somebody who has no concept of train, I cannot communicate what I feel to this person. And I find that's very interesting, and therefore it's also a limitation. So if you talk about the word guard, and you have multicultural people, maybe some people that don't speak English so well, or these kind of things, it's interesting because certain things you cannot convey to them if they do not know the same words or metaphors. Like you had in Japan, you used to have the Ainu, it was like a fisherman's folk, and they had a very specific system for headaches. So you had a octopus headache, you had a crab headache, it was more like a prickly one. The octopus was more like a sucking headache. But if I live somewhere where you have no sea animals, I would have no idea. And say it's back in time, I have no knowledge that octopuses, crabs exist. I will not be able to understand this person when we talk about pain.
Yeah, it's that culture and context that has a massive. That's yeah, basically like what I was trying to get across with this idea of guard is that's exactly what I'm talking about. But in a pain context, exactly, it's that effect of the language and what your kind of cultural upbringing, your kind of context, your environment that you've been brought up in, and what's the environment you've learned to speak in, will have a massive effect on it. And just going back to the use of language, I always bring it up. There's a study by, I think it's called by Loftus and Palmer. I always use this as an example of how language can change how you potentially perceive something. Really awesome. I think it was in maybe the 80s, 70s, 80s, something. But it was based around, I think it was, maybe it was the 90s actually, because it was a video of a car crash. Both groups were shown exactly the same video. Do you know this? This is why you're smiling. Do you know the study?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And it was the use of words. They were described like they were asked about the speed of the car, and one group was how fast was the car going when they bumped into each other, or the other group was how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, and the perception of speed was significantly higher in the smashed than the bumped. Videos are exactly the same, so what they're seeing is the same, exactly the same. How they're perceiving that is influenced by the use of language. And also, as well, is at the end of it says, did you see any glass? And whether they saw glass or not was hugely influenced by whether it was smashed or bumped. If they were in the smashed group, they perceived to see glass more than they did in the bump group. Now, that's visually they're seeing the same thing. The only thing that's changed is one word in the description or the question they're asked, and it completely changes how they perceive the environment. So it's so important how the language you use to deliver certain things within the room. And again, culture, I suppose you would change it for, yeah, you've got to think about the culture and the language of certain people. I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating.
Fascinating. I have a good example for, because I also love the philosophy of history. When the king in France got executed by guillotine, many people watched, they see it all happening. And let's say two people went back home and they both wrote down what they saw. They saw the same thing. One wrote they murdered the king, and the other wrote they trialed citizen Capet. They saw the same thing. But language has a completely different
Yeah.
understanding and also outcome of what it is that they saw, even though they saw the same thing. He lost his head. And I think that's just so fascinating. So coming back to indeed language, for like the ladies COA camps I organize, I tell them I do not really want you to talk more than 2 or 3 minutes. Like it's one thing when you introduce something new, but more I don't want you to talk. And usually you talk a bit more in the beginning, you introduce yourself, you introduce the topic, but after that it should go pretty quickly. The same like in my own room, it's much easier because they know you. So then often you're even under a minute because they know how you talk, they know your mannerisms, they know
Sure.
your language.
Yeah.
Because that's the next thing. If I would train with you or train with somebody else, even if we would both train in a similar fashion. I have to get used to your
Absolutely.
terminologies, how you use things. For seminars,
Hmm.
I define some things right from the beginning, because then it's easier for them to understand me and also easier for me to understand them. And indeed, filming. I always wanted to film, especially with groups that I have not faced before, because it's epic, because it's a completely room I do not know. Typically, I also just play with a game that is related to it, but really like a game, whether it's stealing socks, if it's a leg lock class, just so that they get to know each other, because that you have a room also with strangers, which is interesting. And so I want them to connect, because if they connect and know each other's names, often a precondition they have to meet before they can go to the winning condition, which is stealing the sock, is saying each other's name. Um, it's you get, when you already feel more acquainted, you feel safer, and like that you are immediately a better training partner. You have more fun, you learn more, and again, you have a better experience. And so also for me, when I go to seminars, I make sure I know the names of the people, because if they do something I like, I'm like, oh, that's exactly it. I want to be able to call their name, because that
Mm.
means for me as a coach, I put in the effort to know you. That for me, you're not just a number; you're a person, and in that day, you are in my group. So I want to make you the best, or give you as much as I can as a coach. So also there, I like that's always filmed, but then I can see, okay, roundabout between 2 3 minutes, it's okay, because then for an hour class they have with breaks, they work for about 48 minutes, and it's then 12 minutes while I talk plus breaks, and that they switch partners. So I do calculate before, and usually I do also practice it in my own group, just to see whether there's any things I didn't think of that might be a problem. Of course, I know it's always slightly different because different training room, but like that, I am well prepared. And then I don't need to think so much about that, what I do. I can then look more at what's happening in front of me. So that's so far like my process when I just teach seminars. And I'm happy that Alex now also starts teaching seminars, because that's one thing, to come back to what we spoke
Mm.
about, that slowly the shift is coming, that people look more at who is a good coach versus who is a world champion.
Who's a
And
brown
I
belt?
feel that
Is there only a
people
brown
like
belt?
Alex,
They shouldn't be coaching. They're a brown
only,
belt. I'm a black belt. I should be coaching. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Tell me about it.
he's such a good coach. And I'm like,
I can imagine.
why
Yeah.
does he not have more options? Because I know he will make you better. And that's not said to many black belts. And so I hope that this trend continues, that people are starting to look at who can actually teach me
Yeah.
good things.
There's a long way to go with that. And again,
Yeah,
the belt system is always going to be a problem, because it's always going to be there, especially in the gi, because the belts are visible. Um, like that's look that it's a visible hierarchy, and whether you like it or not, the belts are going to mean something. But I say there's a long way to go to get out of that kind of black belts are better coaches than brown belts, and yeah, it's a long time to. I'm glad you brought up seminars, actually, because this is something that I find confusing and fascinating, and just again, like what I like about that is, so like teaching in your own room. So you were talking about kind of creating this interaction between students, and kind of familiarizing with each other because you're more comfortable. Like, so it's got to be, I've never thought about it that much in seminars and things. And if it's a seminar that is at a club and it's just a seminar for that club, then you assume relationships exist between students, and it's not as difficult. But if you're doing like a camp, completely different, isn't it? Because again, you're going to have a group of people that probably never met each other, and you've got to kind of create interactions between those students, but you've got a short period of time to do it. Now, over time, if you're building those relationships in a club, it's long term. You can take your time developing relationships between students, and obviously, the better that develops, the better the training is going to be. So, I suppose you've got a short shot with like these camps of initially you've got to try and get them to interact and form, what potentially very brief, but some kind of a training relationship before you start the training. The name thing is interesting. 'Cause again, like somebody knowing your name and saying your name is incredibly powerful. Like, especially if it's somebody who's running it and they're perceived as, the coach or whatever.
yeah. This idea I have from Kabir, so
Right.
that I'll
That's good. I like
but he
that.
said, and he's right. So if I don't know it in advance, I just really, if you go to them, really shake their hand and you really
Yeah.
ask for the name with intention, you will remember it. And Also, what I also would say regarding belts, all my camps start no-gi.
Yeah, better.
And it's fascinating because the first day we had 3 classes. First was leg locks, then we had back, and then we had a gi class. So it was like the big reveal. And I knew, because I knew it, because when they sign up, I know kind of what I have.
Guessing what belt
And
people are.
that was
Yes.
so much fun. So I knew, but I knew that the
Yeah,
others did not. And I
that's
saw
good.
with the leg locks of the other one, I saw that white belts were definitely beating up some purple belts with specific gates. So then when the big review came, you saw really some shock. Also, I
That's
mean,
great.
depending, I guess, on people's nature a bit, whether it was horror, or whether they were amused. But it also drives home the point that live training can give beginners and more advanced people
Yeah,
great. You
I
can
think that's
give each other good training
I think that's
regardless.
fascinating. Yeah, like
That was fascinating. I did it on purpose. I did not want it in the beginning.
it's something again. There's quite a few things I want to kind of head back to on that, but it's something that I've always tried to get across to students. It used to really piss me off when higher grades were they literally like, I just don't want to train with them. I can't get anything out of it. And one of the common feedbacks I got from the lower grades was I don't like training with the higher grades because I feel I'm wasting their time. And for me, as you know, when you're in a room where you're the highest grade, it's hard to get good training. So it's on you to find a challenge, to kind of find that challenge point with everyone you train with. Whoever you train with, you should be able to get something out of it. And what I always said to these kind of white belts, like you should be training the higher grades. If they don't get anything out of it, it's not your fault. Because they're the more experienced. They're the ones that can potentially challenge themselves. They can put themselves in bad positions. They can constrain themselves in certain ways to make a challenge. If they say something to you like, "Oh, it's a waste of time," whatever, like ignore it. It's on them. It's their ability to understand how to train and learn. Which again is for my students. I want them to understand how to train and how to learn, and how to get something out of training with everybody. Because as I say, it used to happen a lot in the past. Like beginners didn't like training with experienced people. They need to; it's great for them, but they perceived it as wasting the person's time. I like the gi to no gi. That's fascinating, actually, and not letting people know what grade they are. What I like about a certain game, if I create a game or create like a training drill or protocol or whatever, and it levels the playing field, I really really enjoy it. If I see experienced people having a real issue with non-experienced people and they're really trying, it's like, okay, this is good. We found a way to level the playing field with a game where they potentially don't have to kind of challenge themselves or constrain themselves. We've found a way to make it more even by this training protocol. I think that's fascinating. I enjoy trying to figure out what grade people are. And I've realized I'm really, really crap at it. And my judgment is always usually wrong.
It's with this live training. It's a slice
Yeah,
of the game. So how do you know? Because I had because with the first camp, one point we had mount, and the one who did the best mount on me was a white belt. He
really.
was by far the best mount. Yes, the other high belt. No offense, I don't want to shame them or anything, but
Oh,
you could get
you
them
could
off
say,
some.
at least say who their coach was because it's their fault. Come on.
But yeah, she had the best mount by far. I could not move.
Brilliant.
I couldn't do my thing, and I was like, awesome. I
Yeah.
just love that. And
But then
my favorite mount.
for you, this is great. So you found that white belt. Now, an egotistical competitor or coach would then avoid that person because they don't want to look stupid. Now, for me, if I found a white belt that was causing me a problem in a certain position and they were the best in the room, that's who I want to train with. Like, I don't care if I've got a white belt who I can't escape their armbar of, but I can escape the armbars of all the black belts. I want to train with a white belt because they mean they're gonna help me fucking learn. But then it's a case of like, oh, I don't want to get seen being tapped by a white belt. It's like, well, no, you've found someone who has a skill or has this ability to cause you a fucking problem. Then, man, go back to that person over and over and over again. Like, just to name drop one person actually, one of I say Greg's disciple now, but Max Bickerton. He came and trained with us quite a long time ago. I did a round with him, and he caught me in an armbar, and like I feel my armbar defense is really good, and I like to hang around in like extended positions and turn, and like he armbarred me. I couldn't stop him, so like at the end we did a position from the back, and I just kept feeding him the armbar. He must have armbarred me about 10 times, but like as soon as I saw that his armbar was really really good, like I went back to it, and he like everyone's seen me get an armbar about 10 times by him, but it's like, okay, this guy's armbar is really fucking good. So I was like, I want to do more rounds in armbar with this person now. Irrelevant of people seeing me getting tapped multiple times by this guy. It's like, this guy's armbar can help me get better at armbar. People haven't been challenging me. This guy is. So, but I've got to be prepared. Like, people are now going to see me getting armbarred by this visitor about 10 times. It's like, well, I don't care. I want to try and learn something from this armbar.
Yep. I have a very good friend, and I got her over to the live dark side training. I mean, good for me, good for her, but sometimes also, in a gym where, she can teach whoever she wants, but for training, you have to navigate for yourself. But she was over when we had the Greg seminar, and also we had privates, and I did them with her. But somehow, and we didn't know this in advance, but the topics that were chosen were also really her strong points. I was so lucky because I really was like, I had to work so hard and I loved every second of it because I knew if I did something well or if I won an exchange, I know it was real
Yes. Yeah.
because I know it's one of her
Yeah.
expertise really. So that was really, I found it so cool. And indeed, like you, if I realize they're good, I'm gonna go there. I'm not gonna avoid it. Like my absolute favorite story was I taught in the Netherlands an armbar COA class, and a friend who was teaching there, she was like, "Yeah, would you like to do it?" She was interested in the approach, so we did. And it was, although it was a beginner's class where you really also had like a few days old white belt, so to speak. You also got then some brown and black belts over because I heard that it was that we were coaching it. And I swear to you, towards the end, black belts were cheating. And I had to tell them to stop cheating because indeed I want them to
Brilliant.
explore what you still do when the arm is extended because that's also how I like to go out because if I can break the alignment so to speak for them, the armbar is gone, obviously. So I am like have it, and of course in class sometimes I also like to do this if they do it because
Oh,
I know I come out.
absolutely. Like, if you know you're getting tapped, like that's got to be the last thing you do. Like 100%. At least have some. Take your dignity with you. Like
Tangent, but they so that's what we had to explore. So the thing was that the arm was kind of stretched, but the attacking player wasn't allowed to finish it, but wanted to keep to hold it so that bottom player has opportunity to figure it out. But they were so afraid to do it that they would woof, immediately would go back there. But then also when they were allowed to to submit, but no armbar, so it had to be anything but an armbar. Those black belts of you, they were definitely doing armbars on white belts, and I was like, "You cheater!" Like,
it's
no,
it's
no,
so
and
difficult. It's like, look,
and
it's for your benefit. Don't it's
yeah,
for your fucking benefit to try and make you better. Like,
yeah. And also like the white belts, they were also, you could see it, they were much more creative because they didn't know much yet, so they just tried. It was
yeah,
so clear in that class they didn't have these deep attractor values
yeah,
yet because they didn't train enough yet. And I loved to see the difference, but also the confusion with most higher belts that they start to feel kind of uncomfortable because they're like, how is it possible that, because one white belt, like you could see his tatami gi was still like stiff, it was so you could see it still
brand
had these
new.
folds.
Hasn't
Like,
even washed it. Yeah,
that was how new it was. But that person was doing so well.
good.
Of course, when they play the whole game of jiu-jitsu, they want
Yeah, yeah,
hands. But this slice of
yes.
it, they, and they did well. So much so that some black belts were cheating. And I told them, like, stop cheating, man.
Yeah, they're the
But
ones. It's
yeah,
those kind of games that level the playing field, that equalize things. That I find that fascinating. But again, like, as I've done jiu-jitsu for so long, and it's like it's very hard, even when I'm consciously aware of it. It's hard not to see things through a jiu-jitsu lens. And when I look at, I try and incorporate things from all over the place, and a lot of wrestling and things. It's so hard to look at wrestling through a wrestling lens, and it's vice versa. There's a in Lincoln, where one of my affiliate gyms is a wrestling coach called Lubo Kumbarov, and he was like an alternate for the Bulgarian wrestling team. Like, he's just terrifying. He's like 65, 70 kilos, and he throws me around like a child. I've had some really intense discussions with him about, because he'll teach a lot of wrestling stuff, and I'll try and kind of repurpose it for the rule set of jiu-jitsu, and it's so hard to get him to understand that because his lens is wrestling. His lens, everything's wrestling. It's based around how to win in wrestling, and I'm how to win in jiu-jitsu as well. So it's difficult for him to show me how the wrestling, because we are trying to achieve different objectives. Like there's no pinning in jiu-jitsu, whereas there's pinning in wrestling. You know, you can't submit and all of this. So it's like that lens. The longer you train something, and the longer you train to a certain rule set, the more constrained your kind of view of it becomes. So we do a lot of games based around like catch wrestling and stuff. And obviously in submission wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you can't win by pinning. But I like pinning. I like that. I like I like, not like judo pinning where it's got to be a significant amount of time. I like, if your shoulders touch the mat for 1 second, you lose. Because again, it completely changes the way people train. And I did the catch wrestling worlds about 3 years ago now. And I'd never done catch wrestling before. I just saw the catch wrestling worlds was on, and I looked at the rule set and I was like, that's interesting. I could probably use some jiu-jitsu in that. So I spent 4 weeks training to do this catch worlds. And for those 4 weeks, I had to train for catch wrestling. Now, I couldn't play guard because you get pinned. So I was 4 weeks without playing guard. It was 4 weeks of not letting anyone put my shoulders on the mat at any cost, which I've never done before because I'm lazy. I play guard and I'll happily lay there in bad positions. 4 weeks of not doing that. Couldn't take the back because you can't strangle or choke in catch wrestling. And if you take the back, the person can bridge and pin you. So 4 weeks of just retraining myself not to automatically take the back when someone turns away. And like it hugely changed the way I started looking at grappling, and how to turn someone over and alternatives to kind of following the natural, jiu-jitsu path. But that's all based on what the objective was, because the rules are different. The win conditions are different. So it's going to look different to what I'm used to. And it's going to force me to find different solutions and things like that. So even if people want to be good at submission wrestling or jiu-jitsu, I still get them to do kind of drills and games and training protocols that involve pinning and things like that. And it develops different skills and kind of action capabilities. So
it's like Chris, we learned a lot about kind of catch wrestling for jiu-jitsu, if you will, from Chris Paynes, because he just get up, just stand up, and indeed you realize that how so many people accept guard. So people think that they are good passers / pinners, but they're actually not, because bottom person accepts.
they're letting them have it. Yeah.
So the moment the bottom person's like, fuck this, I'm gonna stand up, then you realize that your passing and your pinning is not good. And what also really shifted our perspective was the difference between, say, scoring positions for rule sets like IBJF, whatever,
Yeah.
and pinning positions, but because they are not the same.
Yeah.
And that really helped people to understand, because I don't mind so much being bottom mount, but when somebody has me completely twisted, overly extended or whatever, I find that much. They don't get points for it per se, but I feel
But
that I find it
that's
much.
It's points and it's win conditions. The way you do things and the decisions you make are hugely influenced by the rule set you're going towards. Our IBJJF, for instance, taking the back. Now, if you just train IBJJF, the back is 2 hooks in. And I don't think that's one of the best control positions. The back body triangle, half back positions are great, but they don't score. So everything is pushed towards these 2 hook positions. But once you change the rules and you change those things, it changes the potential solutions to the problems. I think if you train strictly to one specific rule set, I think it's going to massively restrict the movement kind of patterns and potential solutions you find to these things. Now, if you're then going to compete under the IBJJF, you have to rein that in before the competition. Like I let everyone do all kinds of leg locks all the time, like everything. But if I've got someone competing in a competition where they can't heel hook and stuff, then I've got to rein them in about a month before and just get them used to these rules and not, because it's about creating that opportunity in training. And giving them more kind of opportunity to find solutions. But then I'm going to narrow it down if I know those solutions aren't going to be allowed or they're not going to score in that competition. So we have to kind of bring them back in. The other thing that, again, going back round to the seminars, with the camps and seminars you teach, like all the CLA based ones, are they all mixed, as in students and coaches? Or do you have specific seminars for coaches, specific seminars for students?
I think they're mixed. I do sense that coaches are more willing to travel for COA based seminars
Yes.
more than the traditional ones. Um, where I was asked, like with the Artemis camps, there's more mixture of everything. So there you have a mixture of everything, but then you also have many more coaches that then also do with or at least watch. With the ladies specific, I also just got really many ladies because they wanted the ladies camp and they wanted to explore COA, but I also definitely had a bunch of female coaches that were very interested and curious how to do that. That they also like, oh, I really want to at least have some more games in my classes, even if it's just indeed for fun, for warm up, or just if we worked on something to then also open it up to have a hybrid. And there's always a discussion whether you can or not. But I think that you can see that they were like, oh, this is fun, this works. Yeah, but I mean, I'm also not that famous. I don't know. I
Don't worry
mean,
about it.
I know with Greg, for instance, like when he was there in the beginning of February, we had 80% were coaches.
Yeah. So my question would be that, so, because this is something that always kind of bothers me, but just interests me with seminars. So like pretty much all the seminars and camps and all these things I've taught it's always been a mixture. I don't think this is the best way of doing it. I really don't. I think so. For you, if you were teaching a seminar that was purely for coaches, and you were teaching a seminar that was purely for students, how different would they look? Do you think? To put you on the spot, I'm
I think
sorry. Like,
good for coaches.
yeah.
I
What
would
would you do differently?
definitely, I would explain more why I chose to play it the way I did. So, and with the normal ones, I would just kind of let them do it. I mean, if they
Yeah.
ask, of course, I will tell them. But I think what I would not necessarily add in with, say, students based, I will definitely do with coaches. Simply that that they see how I fought, not that they have to mimic or copying me, but just that they see the deliberations behind it, why I constrained it the way I did, or also maybe why I changed it based on what the feedback I got from the room. So I would definitely add that because every room is different, so they can't really copy paste it. Really, that's like one. That's why I think all
You
the hate on
shouldn't.
Instagram.
Yeah, you should. You shouldn't be. I think the whole copy paste thing is another thing. I think that's
Yeah, you have to really come up with your own
yes,
mistake, make them all, so that you really learn to be independent. um of course, like I look at them and some things I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I also know that even if I were to play them one on one, I know that if I have to alter it, that I can. I know some other coaches said to me like, yeah, I have been using some, but then I flinch when I realize it's the behaviors are not emerging as it quote unquote should, and then I flinch because I don't know what to do. So if I would teach for coaches, I would definitely come with a theme, but I want to make it very clear that this is not so much that I want them to write down and memorize what we did,
mm,
but much more like what was happening in the room and why I changed it the way I did. And so I would kind of compare with what I had prepared to it, what actually
yeah.
happened.
So it would be different then. Yeah, I mean, it would be how much. Which do you think it would differ from the way you teach now with like a mixed group of students and coaches? Would it be much different if it was just coaches?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
because I
Because I
think
also
it's hard to get. So for me, when I go and do a seminar, I have an idea of what I want to try and achieve myself. I want them to get out of it, and this is what I've always struggled with teaching seminars with on this kind of approach, because I would do it completely different if it was just students, completely differently just coaches, completely different if it's all three. So for me, it frustrates me because I don't feel I can, with the mixed groups, I don't feel I can get the most for everyone attending, because there's a very different perspective for a student coming to a seminar than a coach. With the students, most of the time, it's about a lot of them just want to understand how, what the approach is like, kind of thing, and it's almost just they want to immerse themselves in just that approach as it how it feels. Whereas with coaches, it's more about the kind of the development of their coaching and the development of how they kind of run their room and design the games. And yeah, the whole copy and paste thing is this is another thing that I'm starting to see a little bit more. I think there's too many people starting to do that now, and there's a certain games that you have to play, and it becomes less about what your room's like and what your room needs, and it's more about, okay, well, what's the correct game to play, what's the best game to play, and based on this is how they run their room.
I wouldn't rule out though with mixed classes the impact that you can have still, because I mean there's always room for Q&A, or even if it's often afterwards, but I think what I've also noticed is that when you have a coach that is new to COA, I think they should also experience it first,
Yes, yeah.
because and so I think even if it's frustrating for you, or maybe frustrating, I think you I think you still impact many,
Mm,
because they will notice things, maybe with themselves, maybe with their partners, make things that they observe themselves, that will just make them question. Because by the end of the day, I cannot do it for them, also with coaches, but I can give them tools, right? But for that, they need to want it. And
mm,
sometimes I think that when they experience it, because like that Alex experienced you and Florence, that like that also accelerated a lot, even though that was also mixed. So I think, okay, we work hard, we're nerds, we will dive into it because
mm.
when we want to understand something, we will not rest until we, to the best of our abilities, we understand it. I know not everybody is like that, but I do think those that are and really want to understand something, even if it's mixed and even if they could not get as much out of it as when it would have been really particular tailor made for coaches, I think it would still be sufficient.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's I've not seen any kind of the camps or anything like that that have been specifically kind of towards the coaches and things. Whether that's the direction it's going now, it's becoming more popular. Whether there's going to be a bit more of a divide and kind of tailoring towards the coaching community, or tailoring towards the kind of, again, even students. It's like students or kind of competitive students, and whether dividing these groups for seminars is beneficial or not. Again, I'm not sure. This is why I'm interested to kind of get your take on it and how you would approach it.
I think this is the best way is just to try it out, right?
Yeah,
And I mean, you could even make a one camp out of it where you have, two sessions, one students, one coaches. That I think this is something that is best played out. What I can say is that when Greg was in Germany, the majority of the people in those classes were
mm,
coaches, the vast majority.
yeah,
And that definitely changed it, that there was more talk. Like with us was also talk, but still also a lot of work, because for one, it was not one day, we had several days. And most of the coaches already implement COA. So that was kind of a little bit a different vibe than in the other seminars I did in Frankfurt and Cologne. So there was way more talking about why and how and all that kind of stuff, because coaches. So you could definitely see it was a different vibe altogether. But I would just say I think then we just should test it.
I think yeah, it's interesting the way that's kind of going. I found that most of the stuff I've done has been, has attracted more coaches than students. And then the question is as well. Then it goes to, if you want to be a successful student, or if you want to be an athlete in like a CLA or eco live environment, how much do you need to know? Like, I've always found that, I think me and Greg have disagreed on that in the past, because I think the students need to have a good understanding of how the training kind of works and why the training works in order to engage in it effectively. Greg, I mean, this is probably a couple of years ago I had this conversation with him. He may have changed his opinion, but yeah, for me, I feel that just to get that kind of buy-in from the student and from the athlete, they have to have a bit of an understanding of why. And it's not a case of coming in and just trusting that, what they're doing. I feel, and as well to understand how to, like, this idea of things like challenge point and all this. I think as a student, I think you need to know that in order to effectively be able to train in the best way kind of for you. I don't know how much you do with your students, how much you tell them about what you're doing and why you're doing it. This idea of finding challenge and embracing and reinterpreting failure, all of this.
Definitely reframe what winning and losing looks like, what it is, what it does. It's like, but that is also regardless of life training. I think in general, that's just I want a growth mindset, not a fixed one,
Yes.
because that's like, for me, that's more a cultural thing. Um, as to I think when I introduce something new, like a new topic, then I will define things, then I will explain things,
Mm,
like why we need it. Because if I see a deficiency in the group where I'm like, okay, compared to the other skills, I find this is weaker now, we need to like level that up, I will also say that. but they know I don't mean that they suck or anything. It's just that we all grow, and there are moments also where I have things I'm like, oh, that used to be okay, but now in comparison to the rest, it's not. And I think so. We are there quite maybe Dutch direct, honest, direct with feedback, but I do explain why we do this and why this is necessary. And it's funny what I also do. I have now in the we have a WhatsApp group where you have a community, and one is like skill acquisition, and I usually have a short bit now where I write about the new topic that we're working on,
Okay.
where I also just write down, and that is with terminology up to point that I do explain, but a lot also know it by now. I also have to say that they're also just used to it by now because they've been doing it for years. So it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
completely new, but that grew over time.
Yeah.
But then I explain like, okay, this is like the topic. These are like the intentionality, the focus, and what is important, and all this kind of stuff. I do write it down. And one also said to me that he liked it and that he read it. We're busy with it, and then he reads it again, and he's like, oh yeah, because then he feels that he still can get more out of it. So I do it in kind of like
Yeah.
verbal, so written.
So like, man, the next thing then, going for that. So like so I believe the way you and Alex run it, you have all your classes are kind of mixed. You don't have like a beginner's class or a beginner's course, all this kind of stuff. So for me, the thing that I feel to engage with the training well, I think there are certain things that you need to kind of understand. This idea of kind of, again, I refer to as reinterpreting failure. And again, like the direct stuff, kind of growth mindset, all that challenge point, Guadagnoli and Lee, all of their work. I think these are things that are best communicated like really early on to new students. And the problem, because I'm like you or you guys, I have mixed classes, and I always find like what I want to have a beginner's course basically, because I think getting these things across to students at the earliest possible point gets them engaging more effectively with the training faster, and rather than them kind of picking up these things over time. So for me, I think with like new students, it's whether to have that course or whether to, like, I don't know how new students would feel about getting like, say like a handbook, but like just or a few short videos before they start training, just outlining these kind of more kind of psychological concepts of the training before they actually engage in the physical training. Again, I'm just kind of using you as a sounding board just to see what your opinion is on this.
So we call this onboarding process.
Onboarding, basically, yeah. Integration,
So
onboarding, yeah.
yeah, so it's like for me, like especially with adults, like kids, they're just in different, like general is freer, that gets a bit quicker. But with adults, usually the first month, I really, not in a creepy way, I hope, but hoover over them. Like to, um, for me, the first month is about understanding the group and becoming a good training partner, because that is where you indeed, that's it. So that's like what we really focus on. So people are, especially back in the day, were really shocked when I was like, um, but Laurien, don't you have these kind of, uncontrolled issues and blah? I'm like, usually within the month, it's gone. And regardless of size, everybody can train together. Of course, based on what we're working on, it may make not so much sense because it's not so representative, and they can have maybe false positives and stuff, but they could, because they already learned to go up and down the scale of intensity and all this kind of stuff. But that's really our onboarding that we also did already, like with when we were still technique based, because we wanted a safe space. So that means that they have to learn what that means. So for us as onboarding, I will say if we would get bigger, probably videos and that kind of stuff is the way to go. You still have to, of course, still talk to them because I don't know whether they watch it and stuff.
Well,
But
yeah,
like, but that's one thing. But right now we just do it very much with them,
yeah,
and I'm lucky. We're lucky that we have a group of people that are also the more experienced ones. They're also very happy. I mean, we train a lot of training partners during classes, so everybody just takes care of them, the new ones, and they happily do so. And because of that, because they do feel really welcome, and then they relax, and then things go pretty quick. So usually within the month, they are
yeah.
well on board,
So
and
it's the
they're great
same
training partners.
same with those. We have like, I have a lot of people that have been training me for a long time, and they've kind of gone through this process with me. So I'm very lucky in the sense that I can just throw a brand new person in there and know that everyone is going to kind of contribute and everyone is going to kind of help them through. But yeah, this idea of with new students, trying to get like onboard them or get them integrated into in the environment as efficiently as possible. So this is something I've been kind of working on quite a lot recently and trying to think about finding just to get them up and running as fast as possible and get them engaging and being good training partners as well. Learning to be a good training partner is massively important because I say with beginners, like they're usually it's a win-loss thing with everything they try and do, but it's understanding the kind of the win-loss. Yes, obviously there is a win-loss, but there is the development as well. And win-loss doesn't necessarily kind of foster development in a good way. And it's the best way to get across these ideas and these concepts to new people so they can efficiently train as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so for that, there comes more like my trauma informed training in is that onboarding for me starts already on how we write the words, the language we use on our website, and the posts we make on Instagram, when we call them, all these kind of stuff. But also, I tell them what to anticipate because, as you said earlier, it's super scary to go into a gym. So if they know what to anticipate, I can already take a lot of stress
Mm.
and insecurities away. And I also tell them, do expect that you may feel really physical fatigue, that you may get frustrated. The only thing where I'm really strong on is that if you feel the need to explode out because you feel you're run out of options, don't, because that's usually where injury happens. And so I'm like, that just means that you run out of options. You didn't perceive other options, which is normal because you're just starting,
You
and
don't know what you're looking for.
exactly, exactly. So I explained that that's normal. I just asked them not to explode, to instead either they lose the exchange or they tap or say stop or something like that, and then they can ask or do it again or they get whatever it is that they need. That depends on like what the situation is. But just essentially, I give them a panic button because there are also studies that they gave, for instance, there were two groups, one with a panic button and one without, and they had to do, I think they had to solve mathematical riddles or something, and the group and both had like annoying noise that you just kind of freak the fuck out. So they said the one with the panic button that if it becomes too much, they can just press it and it will stop. Interestingly, that group that had a panic button, they finished it, had better results
Yeah,
than the that did not. And so I want to give our people panic buttons because
yeah.
they know there's always a way out. And then they know, okay, it's safe, it's okay. I don't need to explode out. I don't need to panic. That is working for us very well. And that's also like part of the, say, the psychological part of the
It's
onboarding.
having knowing you have that kind of safety net and that panic button again means you're probably less likely to. Yeah, as soon as you're explaining that experiment, I knew exactly which way it was going, which makes complete sense. It's yeah, that knowing it's there means you're probably less likely to use it because you know it's just that safety of knowing there is an instant out and there is that kind of panic button. It's that managing that kind of frustration and a lot of this I kind of lump into what I refer to as like expectation management. So it's managing the perceived expectations, especially, and again with people who have already trained as well, and they're used to a traditional kind of environment. There are expectations of how they expect the class to run, and they are not going to be met with this different way of coaching. And even the schooling systems, the way the schooling system works, you kind of expect when you're learning something, even if it's a sport, you expect it to be done in a certain way. And the way this is much more exploratory, much more open. And I think very early on with new people and kind of people transitioning in, it's finding a way to manage those expectations and get them to understand that this is not necessarily going to be the way you trained previously. And again, this is why I think getting across some of the reasoning behind why the training is the way it is, and getting them kind of on board with how the process works, kind of helps with that expectation management.
What have been your experience been so far? Because we had kind of like two experiences where we got either visitors or people that have definitely been training before and are used to a more traditional approach, so to speak. Is that either they immediately buy in because they're like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And they tend to be more playful anyways. They were always more playful and they kind of tend to be like injured in the other schools a lot. So that is just, it's just smooth sailing. But then we also have those that not. Also, when I tell them like pace yourself, because essentially it is like 90 minutes with resistance.
Yeah, that's a big thing for people. They have two speeds. They either do nothing or they do everything 100%.
Exactly. So they burn out. Like we had people having to puke quite quickly. Like, and it was then still just like the warming up game, because our people, they don't care if they get passed with the same technique a few times. They will learn to adapt. So what happens then is, like, say we do kind of like a guard passing, retention, or like off balancing warming up thing. Then they go balls to the wall. The first couple of times they set the pace, so it kind of it works, but then it stops working because our people start problem solving it. Then they get super frustrated because they're like, huh, but it worked before, why doesn't it work? So they have like this cognitive dissonance moment. Then they try to enforce it more, which usually then is so much exertion right from the beginning that they have to puke.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, it doesn't work anymore, so this is what they mean. And then they're, in a positive sense, forced to explore other options, other opportunities for action. So that's kind of like the what we have had so far. So some never came back. So we had what we had two people coming. One is a very good lifter, like he's very, very strong, very fit, and has a good proprioception already. And another guy came who already trained. They didn't know from each other that they both came at the same day, but they know each other. And he had already a few stars on his white belt, and I could see he moved well, but he had deep adductor rally, so it was clear he could do a few things, but he moved well. And I could really see that he thought, oh, my friend that I know from lifting, I'm gonna do it, because he knew that he had no martial arts experience. However, I mean, you can guess after a few. So I also on purpose did not. And so in the beginning they could go a bit. So yeah, I smashed them. Then I kind of separated them, and in the end they could go together again. And it was so close to even. And that friend did not come back because that hurt too much. That his friend essentially in one session, almost
Yeah.
was there skill wise, so to speak, like based on what we did in that class. And so what have been your experiences so far?
That cognitive dissonance is a really important kind of thing. It's the whole you get it with the traditional martial arts people coming in, and they're kind of black belts in other martial arts, and they come in and get their asses handed to them, and then they've got to kind of maybe accept that there's a better way of doing things, or they can put their black belt on and be the best guy in the room again in the traditional martial arts. I think that's kind of, you find that with certain people have kind of come in and I know they're not going to come back. Especially if they have that bit of experience and they're coloured belts and they get destroyed by other people. And the way I see it is, that's, for me, if that was me, that would mean I'd be more likely to stick around. But for other people, it's maybe it's a character, maybe it's the discomfort of being outside of the environment they're used to. I think that's a lot of it. It's like people get so used to the environment that they're training in and the structure of the class. Anything that kind of perturbs that kind of their feeling, then they're less likely to do it. And I think it attracts more people. The people that stay are going to be the people that are looking for that kind of challenge. But as I say, it's you've got to get them to understand how the training works and how it's different and why it's different. And not saying that everything you've done in the past is complete bullshit, because it's not at all. But it's then understanding that you're not just going to come in and smash everybody, because you've maybe trained longer and it's a different environment. Once they get on board with it, but it's getting them on board. It's that first kind of knee-jerk reaction of, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, and but you can't. There's not much you can do for those people, I don't think, because some of them are just not going to come back, and
It's okay. I don't need everybody.
no,
Like, I also want people for my environment, but sometimes I'm like, I wish I could have given them more.
it's
Um,
afterwards thinking, well, what could I have done differently?
yeah,
Like, I get that as well. There's certain people, it's like, they maybe would have stayed if I'd done this, if I'd done that.
yeah,
But then they might not have. And but you're constantly kind of questioning. I think it's good as the coach, because you've got to constantly question, is there a better way, of doing this? Could I have done something differently to onboard them and to integrate them into that class that would have maybe made them understand more, or, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe they would have stayed, maybe they wouldn't have stayed. It all that again comes back to development as a coach, I think, as well.
yeah. Yeah, but I find the most struggling is if we get people that already did jiu-jitsu for some years, that they are like, so you're doing positional sparring. And I try to explain to them that positional sparring is very important and valuable,
Mm.
but it's not the same
Yeah,
thing.
I use it all the time, but it's not.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we do too. So I ask them like, what are you good at? What are your few go-to techniques? And they always have a few. And then they say, oh, yeah, I'm pretty alright at this and this. I'm like, okay. I said, so what we do is to make sure that apart from those that you already have, you acquire additional skills so that if you ever face somebody that have answers to your few things you can already do well, that you have more answers. But for that, I need to constrain you that you cannot do those options
Yeah.
as
Oh,
much.
I ban things for people all the time. If I see people
Yeah,
becoming
but the
very
thing,
one-dimensional, they're getting banned for at least a month, and you're not anywhere
yeah,
near it. And yeah, it's because they get so good in one position, and then when they start losing that, it's like a security blanket. Like deep half guard is one of the classics I find. There's certain people that like when they're having trouble because they go deep half guard, so I ban it, and then they have a hell of a time. I want them to have difficulty in the class. Like if I see someone having too easy a ride, then yeah, certain things are going to get banned, certain things are going to be forced to do. And it's with a higher grade students, that's unless, as I say, unless they understand how to learn. Because once they get to that point where they get it, I don't need to do that because they do it themselves. But it's being kind of aware of what's going on in the room and being able to watch certain people and you're seeing them revert back to the same thing every time to get success. And it's like, okay, I'm going to take that away from you now. You're not having that back for another. You've got a month now, and you're not having that back for another month. And then they have it back. You find they still don't go. They don't go to it as much. It's great. You almost have to explicitly force them away from their favorite toy, just to kind of.
did this during a seminar with the Artemis camps because there was one lady I know she's really good with wrist locks. So usually I teach them submission based, and when I come at the point like you're allowed to submit, but not this one, I'm like, but you're also not allowed to do.
Yeah, I give individual kind of constraints to certain people. I'm like, but
Yes,
you're
and
doing
she
it
was like,
differently.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's good. It's coming down to knowing your room, knowing your students, knowing your athletes, and knowing what you have to do with certain people. It's like because there has to be specific things for specific people within games. Because it's like I know you're going to do this, so like you're not doing this. Everyone else you can do it, but you can't.
Yeah, like I mean, I like it though when people also sometimes with me or Alex, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I mean, I don't like it easy either. Like if because then I know I'm not because if I would win every exchange, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm
You're
improving.
not developing.
That's
You're
the
not.
point. Like whatever it is, win or lose, I just want to fight hard for it.
Yeah. Getting that across is again, it's that chat. It's the challenge point framework. Is that's something I've used for a long time, and that's getting that across to somebody if they're not challenged, if they're not having difficulty. Like if I don't see it and I'm not there and I can't kind of tweak that for you, like you have to be aware of it yourself. You have to make sure your training's difficult. Like you have to, but again, certain people will naturally seek out challenges, others won't, and they're the ones that you kind of have to impose it on. But again, as a coach, it's getting them to understand that themselves and making them self-sufficient and making them capable of developing and learning and challenging themselves without having to stand over them and take away kind of deep half guard or a Kimura or something like that. I think it's really really important. And again, with the challenge point, what I like about it is every kind of pair, only one person really has to understand that challenge point, because if they're having loads of success, the other person's having no success. So the more experience of the kind of the pair of the dyad, as long as they know that they need to tweak it, they then start to find it harder, which then in turn makes the person who is struggling have more success. And it's that balance. So you've got the more experience of the pair just kind of riding the clutch, as it were, and just kind of keeping it within that range. So that with the experienced students especially, they have to understand that, because if they can fix it for themselves, then they're fixing it for the other person as well. It doesn't need to be kind of both people knowing how to do that.
So as we run to a close, so say I'm a beginning coach or a coach that would like to start with, let's say, more modern approaches to skill acquisition. What would you recommend them where they would start?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a good question. Nowadays, I'm not sure where I'd point people. I think that's the problem. I think just having a conversation with someone who is already trying to implement it is a good thing. And again, I think you do have to have some kind of understanding of the kind of the theory and the literature behind it. I don't think it's as necessarily as deep an understanding as well, you'd have to read as much as you used to. So I think there's a bit more accessible information out there. But I think going along and experiencing an environment that is trying to use a more live kind of approach, a more CLA, eco, whatever you want to call it. I think experiencing that first time is, and then it's finding somebody to kind of have a little bit of a conversation with to start with, someone with experience. And there's a few people out there now. It's not like it used to be that, like when we started, there was nobody really. It was just trying to understand the kind of theoretical academic side and then apply it to an environment that it hadn't really been done before. It has been, there's enough people there now. I think these camps and stuff are good as well. I think camp specific design just for the coaches could be good as well. But I find, like you're saying, I think they're just attracting more coaches anyway. But what I would say, I think what is being missed a lot is still the more kind of the psychology side of it, and the understanding of the kind of in managing the environment, managing students, expectation management, like we were kind of talking about. I think that side of it is really important. Having all the games and understanding how to kind of tweak constraints and stuff is absolutely great. But you can have all that, but then completely miss the psychological side of it, and it's not going to run as well. Say the lecture I gave at the Eco Camp in America, that was based around more about that than it was the kind of nuts and bolts of the kind of CLA approach. It was how to, as a coach, how to kind of make it work. And the more I do this, the more I realize that the kind of understanding of the psychological aspects of it is so important. But as I say, the initial kind of knowing how to run games or run the drills to start with, and I think that's important. But then you're going to have the early issues of coming across the fact that it's chaos, and then you've got to be comfortable with that chaos, and then you've got to be comfortable with that chaos, knowing that your students might think you don't know what you're doing, but you've got to kind of have that kind of confidence in it. And again, once you start doing it and playing about with it, that speaking to other people and finding they've had the same problems, and it's almost like the validation that you're not completely crazy. I think that's really important as well. But as I say, I think away from the kind of specific structural approach to it, I think knowing how to kind of get the best out of your students in that environment, and the psychology of it, and the relationships between students and the students being on board and knowing how to train, all of this stuff is grossly kind of underappreciated and understudied by a lot of these people. I feel it's gone very much down the more kind of abstract and structural kind of side of it than the actual kind of human and side of the environment, which can maximize or kind of really kind of bring out the best in this approach, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
This is why I think Adam Nichols, have you spoke to Adam Nichols before? He's somebody that I think he's great. He's great. Hugely underappreciated because, again, he's more of the softer side of science, as it were, the psychology side of it. But his understanding and the book that he wrote, which I believe has got a new edition coming out soon, so people should buy that. I believe that is something that needs now to be looked at more and needs to be integrated into what people are starting to understand about the application and general structure of the CLA approach.
Yeah, we'll reach out to him again because I know academics are busy. I know that.
Yeah,
I really like him because it's the other side of it that we need so much.
And he knows what he's talking about with that. He's very, very good with it. But then it's joining the two. It's joining the two. I think that's where it needs to go now. You need to understand how to get the most out of this approach, and I think we're coming to a point where more, understanding how to run the games and, scale up and down representativeness and all of this stuff. It's great. Once you understand it, you play about with it. But then there's other variables and aspects that are going to get more out of the learning experience than that now. It's almost, you're getting to a point of kind of you're not getting as much. It's you're not getting as bigger gains out of it at that point, where there's certain areas where there are big gains to be made, and getting more out of the CLA approach. But having said that, obviously on that side of it anyway, there's still arguments. I mean, all you got to do is mention the word invariance, and it seems to trigger everyone nowadays on both sides. That's, yeah, that's no. I think we've managed. We've almost had 2.5 hours. We've managed not to touch on that quite a lot, which is great.
Well,
I think so. We'll leave it. Well, not until they have a conversation with each other and decide to not hate each other as much.
Well, that's up to them.
I'm trying to manage that situation. I haven't had a chance to speak to the American person yet, but yeah, it does seem there's a lot of kind of hatred between both parties at the moment. Again, just to kind of briefly touch on this, I'm not a fan of trashing each other on social media and that kind of back and forth. And I think at the moment that seems to be the way it's going with certain social media posts back and forth. And I'm not a big fan of that, and I don't think that's helpful for anybody at all. So I think all of them need to sit down and stop being dickheads. And I think it comes down to the fact that I seem like the responsible adult in the room when it comes to all of this. And when you have a situation where I'm the responsible adult in the room, like something's gone very fucking wrong. So
I think that I think there's also the scarcity mindset. People want to be the only one, but there's room for many. And we need voices. I think disagreeing is not bad, because it makes you think.
Yeah. But it's being able to listen when someone disagrees with you and take their side of it, and from there. But I feel it's people thinking they're right and other person's wrong, and they're not prepared to listen. They're not prepared to be more open-minded. They're not prepared to have a discussion about it which isn't kind of combative. And I feel when a lot of these people get to talking to each other, especially on podcasts and various things, I feel they go in with the mindset of winning and losing, which again comes back to everything. It comes back to the fact they want to show that they're right and the other person is wrong, and they're not prepared to concede on any point. Because again, it's that idea of, well, if you admit you're wrong, then you must be weak, and it's not. That's not how things develop. That's not how things develop.
I also think there's a tinge of being unhappy when another is successful, because, for instance,
Schadenfreude is it's that thing, isn't it? Is that right? That when someone does really, you take pleasure in someone's failure. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. If somebody would fail, then Schadenfreude or a leedvermaak would be appropriate. Because I think, like, I also heard quite some things about being people unhappy, people earning money, but I'm like, why? I think I have no problem with that. If you put in the work, you
absolutely.
Because I know, we also get already many messages. I mean, I have also a COA a WhatsApp group just for women only. I don't ask money for that, but like I could. But the thing is that so many people want so much. I totally understand, and people just create a platform. And if you really, really want it, because I do believe that the transformation is in the transaction, because many people want the quick fix, which with this doesn't work. No. So I have absolutely no issue with earning money with this, because I mean, what's the difference between when you learn that very well in the application, how it relates to Jiu-Jitsu or becoming a historian? I mean, come on. So that is one thing I feel also that I don't know why earning money with this is somehow is a taboo thing, because I don't think it should.
Yeah, I think it's like people are seeing it as like, again, it's a zero-sum game. Only one person can kind of win, and there can only be one person. It's bad. It's bad for the community. It's bad for everyone, and I think that's what it comes down to. Like you say, they want to be that one, and there's room for more than one. And as well, that I don't like the idea of there just being one person and that, because again, this is based on a non-perfect, like a faulty theory, which again, I'm not criticizing it anyway, but it's a theory, it's a model which is currently best fit of data. We know that. If you know anything about science, nothing is ever perfect. It's a stepping stone to a better theory, which ultimately this will end up becoming. And as well, it's one person's interpretation of that theory and interpretation of how that theory should be applied. There are different interpretations of certain things. This is the thing. My interpretation of it as well, like we said before, I don't agree with it. I think the conscious cognitive side of it plays a role. But if there's just one person that everyone goes to and everyone else gets kind of killed off, then it massively narrows it down. Again, like history is kind of written by the winners, isn't it? It doesn't mean that it's that history was correct. It just means that that's into their interpretation and their view of that history. And it's a slippery slope when it comes to something like this, a really slippery slope. And just the animosity and just shit talking, it's just, yeah, as I say, this is why I've stepped away for so long, and I'm just kind of slowly starting to poke my head up now, and, you know, mainly due to, you know, your other half talking to me and, yeah, realising that maybe not everyone is trying to kind of discredit each other, and people actually do want to fucking learn, and they do want to develop, and they are prepared to, you know, listen to other people.
These people, I learned from all of them.
Absolutely.
All the ones involved. I will also, but no matter how much they disagree on things, I mean, with some things I lean more to this one,
sure,
some things I lean more to that.
It's natural.
But it's natural. And it's also like but also you can change your mind, you know, like there's also things that if I think
that's a big thing for me, yeah.
You can change your mind,
yeah.
And it doesn't make you immediately hypocritical.
That's something that really, really pisses me off. It's something that, like, if you look in something like politics, something especially like the UK politics at the moment, like you turning on something, changing your mind on something because you've been presented with different data. In things like politics, that's a weakness. Like I see that as a real strength. Like nothing is fixed for me. If somebody shows me something or tells me something that contradicts what I already think and I see it as a better way, I'm more than happy to go, okay, actually, that's probably better. I'm happy to change my mind. But for whatever reason, it's seen as a weakness. It's seen as you losing. It's not seen as you learning, which kind of I don't understand. I don't understand that stigma around it at all.
I do like it with history in the sense that they say, like, we will never, no matter how much I read and research and sources, primary sources, I will only be able to approach historical reality. That's it. All we try is to get as close as possible, but we will never
know. Yeah, never know.
And I think that's the same for any theory. As you say, essentially, it will be replaced with something better.
It will.
And that's also why, for me, like, take people like Kid Dill, for instance. He didn't have an academic background, but he figured it out from bottom up, so to speak. We also had him 7 years ago or 8 years almost ago, like we had him also in art school, and that's one of the summers I still remember the best to this day.
Kit's great. I spoke about him before in another podcast, and the fact that he, again, it's the direction that you came with the approach. I've come from top down. I've looked at the research, the science, and then I've applied it. Kit was the other way. Kit was from the mat, and now all of a sudden, you know, he's realizing that there is actually theory behind what he had naturally or organically discovered from a bottom up kind of process. I think it's brilliant. Like, I think he deserves a lot of credit for this, and yeah, because he was along the right track before a lot of people, but he just approached it from the mat to the academic side, as opposed from the academic side top down to the mat.
I mean, Greg also said that he was training not so long ago with one of his good guys, and, you know, Kid is hard to beat. So, I mean, I find it amazing. Also because Kid was also a bit out for a while, doing his own projects, coming back. So that's the thing. There are so many ways to, but also Kid, I think what we all have in common is that we are very willing to fail. We are very stubborn because we don't give up until we somehow figure out something. So I think, to the listeners, if you are stubborn and you're not afraid to fail, then I think this is definitely something for you too.
See, now that could be another, just to, I'm not trying to drag this out much longer, but like the bringing in like this idea of like psychometric testing. So something like you look at like the Dweck stuff, you look at like Angela Duckworth, like grit, all of these things. I think there may be a certain personality traits that allow you to be very successful under certain approaches. And this approach, I think there could be a case of finding certain, be it grit, resilience, whatever. It could be interesting if you could develop a kind of way of filtering through students to find the students that are more likely to be successful under this approach, be it due to, again, stubbornness, resilience, whatever. It could be an interesting way of doing it. But then bringing new people in and making them go through a battery of psychometric tests may not be the most, welcoming approach. Even your dog agrees.
I mean, on the other hand, they could also be like, "Oh, but I feel seen." They want
It
to
could
know
be
me.
that. It could be that people give a shit, and it's another thing. I'd like to try and do that. Like have two groups of white belts and separate them due to kind of personality traits and all these things. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas. Whether I do them or not is different.
I do notice, like in our group, there are people that want to know the whys much more. There are people I know that they indeed want to challenge more in the sense of when they realize they have a weakness, they just will
Yep.
be in that weakness until
Yeah.
it becomes a strength. There are others they just want to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah. I think there are
Just
personality types that,
yeah.
again, personality type research, I think it depends what you look at, how, certain personality tests divide in certain ways. It's finding that there are I think there could be correlations between certain characteristics of personalities and the kind of the predisposition to potentially be more successful. But then obviously there are a lot of variables at play as to whether you do well or you don't do well. It's a complex thing. It's all down to complexity.
Yeah, it's also like when we get tryout people, because sometimes they kind of want to see my reaction. They're like, "Yeah, I also went to, or I also will go to other schools," and I'm like, "You should, because you need to figure out which environment you feel you will thrive most." And usually they get a bit, they're like,
they expect you to talk shit about them and go, they're fucking idiots, and
yeah. I mean, there are. I mean, I have to say,
sometimes you have to, like,
you have to,
but most, yeah.
But usually I'm like, go there. Same with yoga. I'm like, check out which style, which teacher resonates with you the most. And
absolutely,
and that can also change. I have to say this too, like that there can be moments where you realize that something that got you here won't get you there. And that's indeed where cross training is important if you still would like to stay with the same coach, or also where if people want to change, that they also definitely should.
But it's their choice as well. You don't own students.
No,
it's their choice. If they find a better fit, and then that's great. Yeah, I think it's finding that fit. It's finding that environment you're comfortable in, environment you're happy in, and it's fun, and that's the thing. But it's giving, making sure students realize they have the agency and the freedom to make those choices. And when they join a gym, it isn't a case of, I'm their student and, they own me in some way, which is the old-fashioned kind of, dare I say it, Brazilian way. But that's not the healthy way.
No, it's not. I mean, that's also another reason why I think that life type of practice and trauma informed coaching go so well hand to hand, go hand in hand together, is because they have choice. Because if it's top down and I tell you what to do and exactly how to do it, where to put your, there is no choice. Hence, they cannot practice self-autonomy, which is exactly what people that are healing from trauma need or anything need. So yes, I set the perimeter.
It's good, because those things allow you to be good at jiu-jitsu, and they allow you to begin the healing process from trauma. And there's a huge crossover.
Having said that, do you have any last words or things you would like to share?
I think so. I've got through most stuff, and again, I'm aware that anything else that I say will go off on another tangent and another rabbit hole, and I think podcasts shouldn't be longer than 10 hours. So
right on time.
Okay. Brilliant.
Then Ed, thank you so much for this. I learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ed, for sharing your time, knowledge, and experiences with me. I enjoyed discussing ideas with you, and I hope that the listeners did too. Specifically to my listeners, do you want to experience Ed Ingamells live too? Check out our gym's website for more information regarding our upcoming camp with Ed and Raf Saib. Bye for now, and wishing you a lovely weekend.